Hey, Alex. Hi, Lynn.
Hi, how are you?
I'm super. How are you?
Good, thanks.
I uploaded some material. Yeah, I think I emailed you about that. So that's all I had time to pull together for you yesterday.
Not a problem. I'm still sifting through it, to be honest with you.
Right, and maybe I didn't. So I don't. When y'all share a folder with me on Google Drive, and then I dump things there, I don't know if you get a notification, an email notification from the Google platform that I've done that.
I haven't received one. I don't know if there's maybe a setting I can change.
Did you get a notification that I had added things to Google Drive this afternoon or yesterday?
I didn't know. I just received your emails.
Okay, so maybe Lynn, since you were the first to ask for like a lifeline on this stuff, could you send an email to everyone and let them know that I've created a folder in the shared drive called Brush Park or something.
Okay.
And it has my name affiliated with it. I'm opening it up now. So it's in the shared drive, and it's in our 2007. It's in our comp design, wherever that is. Why am I not finding that? Oh, where? No, I'm not. Shared with me. Oh, it's shared with me. I have to go there. Comprehensive design. _ M Farlow, right? Do you see that,
I can
Lynn?
see it.
Okay, so there's not just stuff for Lynn, but there's other things, right? Like a typical code analysis sheet for the very first building that we're doing at Brush Park, and so there's a lot there. Oh, and this is a good one, right? Multi-tenant residential mechanical electrical design guidelines. So for that group, right, that's kind of like, that's really the best of everything you need to know. So I'm just dumping stuff from like my office, and I'm going to get yelled at for doing this, but I just dumped things from my office that were relational to our effort at Brush Park, so as to elevate the level of sort of discourse vis-a-vis your research for this stuff, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so so last Tuesday there was a sign up, not a sign up list, but like a roster in the chat box, and now that's gone. Oh, Alex, are you going first, for instance, or is Josh going first? How do you guys want to do this?
I think I was supposed to go
Nancy?
second.
You were, Alexandra? Okay.
Yeah, I don't remember who was first, but maybe.
Okay, no worries.
I think I was originally supposed to be first this evening, but Mark, we had time to discuss on Tuesday.
All right. So yeah. So you actually you were actually supposed to be tonight. I remember that now. So why don't we just spend a few minutes, since the class, I guess, has already started, to make sure that you're I don't want to say good to go because you're still getting through this, but is there anything else, Lynn, that you needed to go over?
I think at this point I'm okay. I have great resources to go through, and it's just putting slides together at this point to communicate the information back.
There is something called Brush Park Design Guidelines. That's a PDF in the dump folder that I created for you. But Lynn, there's actually something from like the 1980s or 1990s that was created. It has like a hand-drawn pen and ink drawing of stuff in Brush Park, and it's the actual design guidelines that were initially created for that community development group, the CDG. So I looked on Google for a couple of moments I went through a couple of pages of Google and I couldn't find it, but I would keep looking for it. And if I, for some reason, have it on my desktop from my office computer and I find it, I'm going to email it. I meant to do that today and it was a shit show again today. So I wasn't able to get to it, but I would definitely look there. But there is a lot to look at. And I'm hopeful that the Brush Park Design Guidelines from 2015, 1104 that I sent you is helpful. And then the A and B Design Guidelines, from which the site information about our site was, extracted. All right.
Yeah,
so
and
some
actually,
of that will look, I hope, familiar.
I do have one question for you, because a lot of these documents that I'm going through for my topic already have, they have a wonderful set of graphics explaining certain decisions and overall overarching themes. I guess is the goal with this sort of to regurgitate that and share sort of the basics with peers, or recreate and like to a certain degree, depending on what that schematic is or diagram is.
Can you repeat that? You went dead for a minute. Can you re-ask the question?
Yeah. So for my topic, Future City Detroit and Brush Park Design Guidelines and Zoning, a lot of the documents that I've been going through have graphics already created to communicate certain directions or themes. I'm just wondering if it's the mandate here and not to, if it's to regurgitate some of that and summarize with a focus on our site and project specifically.
You definitely can use those things. And anytime that, just like a term paper in 10th grade, anytime you quote from a primary source like our firm, anything from our office, you need to give Hamilton Anderson Associates
credit.
The credit. And that's why I've actually left the file names as they are.
Okay, perfect. Because it would be quite an effort to redo a lot of it from scratch.
No. This is only like a 2-week research effort. You all have a lot of territory to cover in a short amount of time. So I expect that anything that you all find that pertains to your topic that is good to go in that regard, then you just have to quote the source.
Okay, wonderful. That's very helpful. Thank you.
Mark, just real quick, this is Josh.
Hi, Josh.
Can you tell me where that dump folder is?
Okay, so in the shared folder that I think Michael created, the comprehensive design folder, says comprehensive design fall 2017. There's another folder in it called module 1 : research themes. If you click on that, there's another folder called Brush Park _M Farlow. And for like you all, I did a code analysis. I gave you my code analysis sheet for A3. I just gave you that sheet from the set of construction documents. right? Eric, you see that too?
Yeah.
So let me pause and just explain that again. So A3 was the name of that's being built right on your site, and it goes through the materials of the code assessment from construction type and area and egress and all of that stuff, all the way down to the actual code sections that we've been asked to use for this building. So that might be useful to you guys, right?
Right.
It might be useful to everyone. But if you use that as it is, then you need to give Hamilton Anderson credit. That's what I'm trying to get across to Lynn.
Okay.
Have anything else?
No, that was it for me this evening.
Okay, I'll assume you're good to go. If I say this to almost all of you at the end of our individual conversations and forget to say it to some of you, I'm sorry, but I will say that I will try to say at the end of a Thursday session with you that I'm not going anywhere this weekend. So if you have any questions, you can text or you can email me. I'll be available to you. And for everyone's sort of reminder, it's a holiday weekend. So again, if I forget to say this, happy Labor Day weekend. Okay. So Lynn, we've taken care of you.
Yep.
Good, thank you. And then Alexandra, you're next.
Yep. Go screen share.
Good. I asked Sarah today if you were freaked out about all of the stuff we're covering very quickly and very deeply, and suggested that you weren't overwhelmed just yet. So I'm glad to hear that.
No, I'm okay for right now.
Good, good.
Probably change over time, I'm sure. But
What's your topic? Can you remind me?
yeah, I'm doing building the innovative envelopes for a building.
Oh, good for you.
Yeah. So I just started looking up. Well, first I was going to focus on like glass enclosures. These are some links I have up, but I started looking at more of like smart technology with different like nano systems and like it's like a real life like skin kind of that reacts to the environment and it's like a smart system.
Mm-hmm.
Different systems I'm finding that like react to the sunlight and certain.
Alex, your internet connection's a little spot.
Getting spotty.
I'm only getting like every second word. Are you using maybe headphones?
Let me try talking to the headphone.
Yeah, that might be easier because the microphone's working too hard maybe to pick you up.
Let's see if this is better. Is that better?
Good. Sounds better. Just
Okay.
keep talking.
Okay.
You might have to repeat what you started with.
That's okay. So just to repeat, I'm doing innovative building envelopes, and I originally started looking at. I was going to start looking at glass enclosures first, because I know Wu's doing cement, I believe, but I started looking at different systems that. I don't know if they're like smart systems, but they react to like the atmosphere and the environment around them. So like I know this one has like different layers that deals with like sunlight and ventilation, specifically since Ash was talking about, let's see if I can find it. Yeah, these like double glass systems that help the HVAC. Right. So I've just been looking at a bunch of these examples and I've been saving all the photos and diagrams with them, so I can talk about them in my presentation.
Good.
So that's kind of the path that I've been on. And I don't know where to necessarily start to look next, so if you could help me out with that, that'd be really great.
Okay, great. So I'm happy to help.
Mhm.
Oops, I didn't want to screen share. Sorry, I wanted to send a chat. Okay, so I need you to dig into this firm. They're a German firm, Sauerbruch and Hutten. They do these amazing. Well, they're an amazing firm that does amazing work.
Mhm.
Their work. They teach at Harvard occasionally. They're very popular in Europe per se, and their urban work is interesting and provocative, but their that deal with the double and triple skins in a meaningful and significant sort of way, right? So they're interested in the kinds of issues about thermal resistivity and ventilation and aesthetics like you're talking about. That's the first firm. The other firm is no surprise. I don't know if I'm spelling Architekten right. It doesn't matter. Just type in Banish. They're another German firm. The Banish is the firm, Alex, that did the Genzyme headquarters in Boston.
Okay.
And you toured that in one of the AIAS trips. But that building would be a really important case study that talks about how the atrium and the curtain wall are operating the way a zipper links together. They're operating cooperatively to create a system of sort of finding balance and equilibrium between the environment outside, the environment inside, and so forth. I think there's actually like a video or maybe a PDF of drawings about that building. It won all sorts of like AIA awards. So there should be a dump truck full of information about the Genzyme. Here they are. Genzyme makes like, they're like a prosthetics company, or it doesn't matter what they do, but that's the spelling of it.
Okay, got it.
So that's their headquarters in Boston.
Yeah,
So Banish is really important. I'm sure you've seen it, but this is a really important example.
Okay.
Then so what I'm sensing in you is kind of an interest and a predilection for like these high performing curtain walls. So maybe that's kind of those are the buzzwords that you need to drill into the web for, and the work of these firms will maybe lead you to other firms that are doing that. However, I'm also kind of that would be like the comparison between digital and analog. I also like analog, like low tech, low brow.
Yeah. Right.
Like, so when you look at the work of Lorcan, of Loha, and the sunscreens and the sunshade and the perforated metals, right, that he's using on buildings that are kind of equivalent and comparable in size and equal in similar in program to yours. He's doing some very interesting things that that you can take stock of. Another firm that is interesting in Grand Rapids, the Grand Rapids Art Museum. Do you know that piece? It is.
Yeah, I know that building.
So they do some very interesting work in that regard. Let me. Oh, and then this British guy, some very interesting mixed-use buildings, and has pushed the envelope literally of the curtain wall. And then this is Jeannie Gang, Studio Gang out of Chicago. Her whole office is committed to kind of architectural environmental sustainability. So she deals with that from a kind of a total holistic approach. But as a result of that commitment, her curtain walls, like in the Aqua Tower, are kind of interesting. And she's also done the a building. Where are you from, Alexandra? I know where you are, but where are you from?
I'm from just outside Detroit.
Oh, so you may not know this. At the Kalamazoo College, there's the Argus Center. So this is another interesting building by Studio Gang, Jeannie Gang, that you could look at as it's a small, like, one-story building, but the curtain wall is quite unusual. I'm just looking at my list for you. These guys are pretty amazing. So I would look there as well. But I think what you need to do is maybe think of a way of organizing your research in an intelligent, digestible way. For you, as a way of thinking about it, and as in terms of making sure that you approach or hit on all of the sort of dimensions of the curtain wall, but for others to make it simple to sort of take in.
Right.
Because ultimately, I want you to know more about this topic than anyone in the studio. But it's also your obligation to bring everyone up to your level of expertise. So the way I think that you need to do this is, you need to say, like enclosure, and then drop some arrows down. This is like an org chart, right? Drop a couple of lines down, and one line says opaque, one line has a box that says translucent, and another box says transparent, right? Think of it quite simply in that really sort of basic way. And then from that, start to list materials that achieve those like physical characteristics, glass, metal, or wood, and concrete, and cement panels, and brick, and right, and so that you in a way exhaust and examine, and then exhaust all of the materials that fall within those three virtues, right? Transparent, translucent, and opaque. And then within each of those material choices, you give case study examples, right, of how architects, in terms of the best practices, have implemented that. And then within each of those, particularly within maybe glass, you could get into double skinned, right? Within brick, you can get into brick with block backup, or brick with metal stud backup, because there's like differences in the thermal resistivity of a curtain wall of brick in that regard. But always bear in mind, Alexandra, that we're not talking about a high rise, right? So we're not talking about a sparkling, glimmering curtain wall that is going to be 70 stories tall. We're talking about something that's much more modest. So I think that's why it's important to look at the architects I gave you, and also maybe this guy too, Michael Maltzahn. Okay. No, I think you froze. I see Josh moving. Yeah. I'm glad you're alive, Josh. You're the only indication that this is still going through.
You can't see anybody else?
No, I can see, but they're all like, because there's so much bandwidth getting crunched. Oh, Woo, I see Woo now. She's moving. But everyone else is just like a static profile. Alex had to re-enter the studio, so she must have just...
So this
Lost
building
our
code
connection.
summary, I printed that off.
Yes.
We're not producing something like this because that would
No,
defeat the
no,
purpose.
but I have that. I gave that to you, Joshua, so that you know, you at least talk about all of those things in the
Right.
way, in the format, with the division of labor between you and Eric, so that it's comprehensive.
Right.
And in terms of that particular document, and since you know you guys do this, you have this conversation in your office, I would appreciate if you didn't print a large sheet of it and leave it on your desk.
Sure.
I would be appreciative if that was like not if you would just be discreet with that.
Understood.
Because someone's signature is on that, someone's license number is on that, right?
Yep.
And I'm trying to do you a favor by sharing with you what I know about this stuff, and that's all I'm saying. You know what I'm saying.
Yep.
Thank you.
Excuse me, can I jump in because I do the enclosure with Alex too.
Okay, good. So Alex is trying to get back in here. Alex, are you with us? Yeah, I see you
I'm still
now.
with you. I came back.
Okay. Okay. So the last thing I was saying, and I'm glad Wu reminded me that she's sort of tag teaming with you on this, is to look not only at the work of MVRDV, but out of like the Netherlands, but also the work of Michael Maltzahn, a name I gave for some of you on Tuesday night. I'm just saying that you know, before you sort of went off the grid for a moment, don't get sort of seduced or distracted, right, by the architects that are doing these multi-story glass high rises. But look at the material choices that seem relational to the project's size for your case, right, which is a 5-story, 4-story, 5-story, maybe 6-story building. Okay.
Okay, so
Cool.
So for the assignment, you called the enclosure innovation. So I think I focus more. Do you want me to share
Focus
my
more on what item, Wu?
innovations?
Yes.
Yeah. So I want to share my screen with you.
Go ahead.
Okay, so this is the concrete part. So I search about the eco concrete and living surface concrete and bendable concrete and self-healing concrete and the light transmission concrete. And this is about
Cool.
the micro algae facade. So, and the photovoltaic
Sure.
coating and paints, and liquid granite and electrified wood,
Wow.
the mushroom insulation, and electroactive polymers.
Polymers. Yeah, polymers.
Yeah, so these are the what I was focused on.
So the innovation stuff is really interesting because this is not what we would call best practices. This is like in terms of the materials I was talking to Alexandra about, right? Wood, brick, glass, metal, cement panels, right? Those sort of 5 commonly understood best practices materials. So I appreciate that Alex has those, but I also appreciate that you're looking at things that are being invented and innovated really as we speak, right? You know, like in real time right now. So I think this is a perfect sort of counterpoint to the stuff Alex is bringing up.
So what do you think? I mean, research deep or think about more because some of this is haven't on market yet. So
some of this is what now, Wu, please?
Not on market.
Yes, I understand. It's an innovation, right?
Yes.
So,
yeah.
So what is your concern? I mean, in my mind, you know, your research is uncovering these items that are, while not on market, may be on market. So what would you say is your next step?
Yeah, I'm thinking research deep for the things, the materials already in market, and which some of them have the example such as the micro algae facade. So there is already have that project.
Okay. And maybe you guys should also look at some of these architects and see that I've just listed, and there's many, many more, but maybe there are materials that some of these folks are exploring as well. Maybe there are case studies that you can link to some of these material innovations.
Okay.
Okay. Alexandra and Wu, do you guys have anything else that you need to go over?
I'm good.
Okay, good. And you're good as well, Wu? Okay. I thank you for giving me the thumbs up. That helps a lot. I do appreciate the format of these plates, Wu. So thanks for taking the sort of time, right, to sort of upload the research into that template and crafting it in a really sort of beautiful way. So that I think would be kind of an expectation for all of you for when we review these. Okay, so keep moving on that. Also, yep, I know that. That's what's cool. I also want to make sure that those of us that are here and listening to all of this, that you know, when you put materials on these boards, on these plates, make sure that you credit your sources, right? That you acknowledge, you know, where the photographs came from, where if there's text that you're quoting, make sure that you attribute, that you give attribution to the original sources, so that because that's the right thing to do, because that's what we expect you to do at this level, right? At this sort of advanced level of undergraduate and at this sort of early level of graduate work, attribution is an essential responsibility of yours. All right. Cool. Who's the next group that I'm going to visit with tonight? Who am I going to talk with next? Thanks, Wu.
I still have to talk to you, Paige.
Okay, go ahead, Paige.
So I have sustainability.
Good.
And I have gone over.
That's a big topic.
Yeah. I've gone over net zero buildings. I'm wondering if I should show examples with it, or should I just explain what net zero is? And okay.
Sure. Both. I think you do both things. I don't know that there are many net zero buildings locally.
Mhm.
You can. Are there? Do you know where are you? Where are you right now?
Taylor.
Do you know of any in the Detroit area?
No,
Michigan?
not really.
Yeah, there's probably not many. So I think it would be useful for us to, like, you know, see one, right,
Mhm.
through your case study, through your research, because I think that would be interesting.
Okay.
And then I think you need to tell us, right, you know, what is it, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't seem like that would be that, like, difficult, but it must be, because there's just not a lot around. But there may become a point where it's a requirement, right, or an ambition that gets sort of ratified. And I'm wondering, now that I'm talking to you, Paige, are there communities, like Chicago is like crazy progressive in sustainable, the requirements for sustainable buildings, and so are there communities, are there cities, Paige, that actually necessitate sustainability or net zero buildings in their city? So that would be something to talk about.
Yeah. Okay. Also, under water conservation in urban sites, I've been using the mechanical and electrical equipment for buildings,
Yes.
and it has a lot of good information. Should I go as far as to maybe suggest some specific types of, like, faucets, toilets, bathing equipment?
Well, first of all, you may have come in as I was saying this, so I'm sorry if I'm repeating myself, but in the shared folder, I created a folder with my name on it.
Mm-hmm.
If you have you seen that folder? Have you looked at it yet?
No, I have not seen that one.
Okay, so there is a folder under module run research themes that's got my name on it. Double click on that.
Is it under the drive?
Yeah, it's under shared with you. Michael created that for us.
Okay.
Got it?
Almost. Is it under module 1? Or is it?
Yes.
Okay. Module 1.
See the two folders?
Yes.
My name, click on my name.
Yep.
Okay, do you see the SES PDF?
Yes.
Click on that. So while
Okay.
this doesn't necessarily talk about sustainability directly, it talks about the degrees to which a mechanical system, an electrical system, and plumbing strategies can contribute to a more efficient building, right? And it comes in, like, it comes to you in the conversations of, like, good, better, best, right? You can get the best fixtures, for example, in terms of promoting water sustainability and water conservation, but of course there's going to be a cost to buying that fixture. So they graduate the information for you. I would encourage you to look there. I would also look through that very carefully. But I am not suggesting that you necessarily need to specify, you know, plumbing fixtures and faucets and things like that, unless that becomes, I think, for you, a compelling point to sort of share and talk to your classmates about. But that's not my sense of it. I think sustainability for me is really trying to help architects be more responsible designers in terms of minimizing in the process of, you know, detailing and dimensioning the buildings, reducing the number of cuts, and reducing the number of trips or deliveries, or the number of other processes or equipment, or equipment that consumes electricity or belches out waste or uses a lot of oil or gasoline to install things. What are the things that we as architects need to be cognizant of, you know, in order to design more responsibly? Not just the sort of prosaic suggestions like, you know, find the materials within 500 miles. That kind of, we already kind of know that stuff. What are the latest thoughts on sustainability that really have the possibility of creating significant qualitative impacts on our building designs? For example, and this is actually something that I think is so important in this project in terms of where it is and what it is. There's an architect that I think he's actually from Birmingham. He designed a house in Birmingham, and it was announced as a sustainable house. When I was in the Rotary Club, they actually had him come in and speak, and he presented the house. And roof pitches of the houses, roof allowed natural light to come in. It promoted internal ventilation. Honestly, Paige, it looked like a house from my second year environmental studio class at Lawrence Tech back in the 1970s. Like he did nothing new to engage the conversation. Where the house was, and thinking, wait a minute, wait a bloody minute. You've got this $700,000 house on a lot in Birmingham where it's a house where I'm still gonna have a garage, right? Where I park a gas vehicle and I'm still gonna have to drive to work. It's not sited near downtown. I can't walk to get anything. I can't walk to go to the dry cleaner. Can't walk to go to the grocery store. Can't walk to go to get my beer on Saturday afternoon, right? How viable as a sustainable alternative to living is that, really? And so I think the whole predicate of the studio about, you know, building downtown, repurposing an existing city lot, adding many uses to the building, right? These are things that I think contribute to sustainability in a really, you know, subtle but meaningful way. So that whole idea about live, work, and play, right, all happening within the same building is, I think, a really important consideration. Then finally, Paige, I think you'll need to rely less on me and more on Professor Ragheb in terms of talking about his expertise in this topic. So I'm going to push you to him because he also has ways of helping you guys take the buildings that you end up designing, right, and then testing it, evaluating it, and seeing if it actually passes the test, right? So he has a climate consultant program through, I think, the University of California at Los Angeles that he'll want you to run your building through, right? So you'll want to get the information from him about climate consulting. He'll also talk a little bit more about sort of optimizing the actual position of the building relational to wind or natural light. So what are the precepts for that stuff when you're dialing in an urban building in downtown Detroit? And also, I think the that question of water conservation. What makes sense in a building that probably has some, I don't want to say flat roof, but has a roof that has capacity to collect a lot of stormwater that if there wasn't a building there, the ground would have collected. So what are you doing? What are the ways that we deal with in big footprint buildings? What are the ways, the smart ways that we deal with collecting stormwater? And what do we do with that stormwater? Can we run some appliances? Can we sprinkler? Can we use brown water for any of the resources or the needs or the processes of operating the building, right? So whether it's rooftop cisterns, stormwater vessels, downspouts, conductors, right? All of that stuff. Those are things that I think that you need to dial into. But I would encourage you to rely on ASH for sort of opening your eyes to that topic. But I think if you chose this topic, Paige, you're probably already really interested in it. Like it's something that you're really like committed to.
Yeah.
True statement. So you probably already have like a reserve of data and intelligence on this subject that I want you to dig from, right? I want you to pull from that as well.
Okay.
And then finally, materials. So in some ways, the stuff that Alex and Wu are looking at, you know, exotic materials, right? But if the glass that you're wanting to use is the best thing for promoting the best solar heat gain coefficients or the best sunshade coefficients or something like that, and it's a great value to buy, is what you're recommending, but you need to have like 14-year-old girls working in a factory in China to make, you know, like where's the balance, right? How is that a sustainable model? How is that a sustainable material for us to use, right? So try to like drill into this, but also be expansive. Ask the questions, really, is this really right? Is this really fair to the planet?
Okay.
You know, Paige, if you're, as an aside, if this is a topic you're really keen about, I would like you to read you can get it for nothing used. I'll loan you my copy. I've read it. It's my Bible. It's a series of maybe 12 or 20 essays. I can't even remember. They're so beautifully written. It's so beautifully written. But this is kind of a farmer poet guy. He's from South Indiana. And now I think he lives in a community in Kentucky. I follow him on Twitter. He reminds me, the things he says reminds me of John Dingell. You know, the senator, the congressman rather. Anyways, Wendell Berry writes about a whole bunch of things in this book, but the whole attitude about the land, about conservation, about farming, and about understanding that the human action on the world and on the in the soil has a reciprocal reaction, and that we have to be stewards of these things, right? It's so inspiring. You can watch him on YouTube if you don't or can't get the book, because he's given like talks and lectures. And then finally, I think another person, she is somewhat difficult to follow because her writing is so profound. But if this topic is if this is something that you're really committed to, It's Annie Dillard. So Paige, I taught architecture at Mississippi State. That's in the deep South, you know, capital D, capital S, a part of the world where the land and farming and water conservation and heat and humidity and clay, you're right, because there's like stormwater runoff problems, is a problem. Look at Houston right now, for example, same kind of soil. So there were people there that were really committed to these themes back in 1984 when I began teaching there. And I asked my first year students to read these two books. And my students from then still talk to me today about the impact of these two authors on their own practice. So whether you read them now or at Christmas break after this whole class, that's my present to you.
Perfect. Thank you.
Wendell Berry is like, he's my touchstone, right? I just think the world of him.
All right.
Pilgrim at Tinker Creek it's going to give you a migraine. Maybe you're you probably are a lot smarter than me and can read things that are so. And here's the thing, like you'll read them and you'll like understand almost every word they're writing, but what they say is just so profound that it puts you back on your heels. Have you ever had Aaron Jones, Professor Jones at school?
No, I have not.
Oh, he's the same way. Everything he says, all the words he uses are words that we're using right now. But he puts them together in these unusual ways, the orders of them, and he compacts them, and then he makes sentences that link together. And I'm like, I feel so simple. I don't understand what you just said. And I just sit there and listen to him. And I'm kind of stunned by it all. And so in many ways, I think Aaron should be added to this list, but he hasn't written anything yet. But Wendell Berry and Annie Dillard are two people that I'd like you to consider. Give you a larger umbrella under which this theme of sustainability should reside or should stand. But I think you need to rely not only on them and these remarks, but also what Professor Rageb can share with you. And I suspect that he will make sure that you look at all of the documentation about LEED certified buildings and what are the tiers in that. Talk about the role of the USGBC, not only locally and in Detroit, but also what is the material that they're producing and sharing with design professionals like us. And so, you know, you may need to put a lot of information that is similar to in ideas, but you may have plates that are just covering a lot of territory. Again, because your role, I think, your responsibility, Paige, is to make sure that everyone else knows and loves sustainability as much as you do right now.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Cool. Anything else?
I think that's good. Thank you very much.
Okay. Great. Thanks. You're welcome. Good to meet you.
You too.
Okay, who's next? Nancy, are you next?
I think I'm next.
Andrew? Okay, Nancy. Nancy, where are you again? You're in Texas?
Yes.
You're near are you flooded?
Oh, no, we're okay.
Good, I'm glad. My heart is breaking about what's going on there, and I'm keeping my fingers crossed. I honestly, I don't mean to be Eeyore here, be gloom and doom, but honestly, while what has happened there, what is continuing to happen there was really, really bad, I actually think it's going to get a lot worse. I think the the impact of the water supply. I think the impact of the flooding. I think the impact of the explosions. It's just, this is an environmental disaster, the magnitude of which we can't even comprehend yet. I'm so concerned. Anyways, that's my editorial for tonight. I'm glad that you're dry and safe.
Thank you. My
What
topic
are
is about structural systems of mid-rise buildings.
Great.
Actually, I'm doing this with
So how did you
Luis.
want to organize this material?
Okay, well, like a bunch of information, and we don't really have the structure yet. Luis was helping me with the researching about, let me see, Luis just joined. He was doing
Luis is
about
Good.
he actually emailed me his info and some like characteristics about this type of designs. And I was focusing on getting info about the underground parkings and basements.
Gotcha.
Yeah, actually, I have maybe I can share it.
Please do.
Oh my God, my internet is so slow, so I'm sorry.
So Luis and Nancy, you both are working together on this, correct?
Yes.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Okay, here I have a lot of facts about underground parking. I'm doing like characteristics and what makes it a good design to make it underground, because some of you know doing an underground parking is actually a lot more expensive, but
Yes.
them to don't have like the visual, like how do you say it, like you have more space to be used in a different way, like to, I don't know, to put landscaping. I know that we're not obligated to put landscaping, but it's one of the options. I have here the functional requirements about parking and structural requirements. These are some points that I was just pulling from the internet. And what we need to look also is in safety and security in this kind of places, fire and life safety signs. These are some types of examples that can be for the design, and advantages about using this kind of parkings. So the basement, well, the basement is it could be considered as an underground parking. Since one of the uses for this kind of space is parking, entertainment, pool, game rooms, mechanical rooms, and all that. Into structures, I found these really interesting facts about steel versus wood structures for mid-rise building. I have like the benefits of using steel structures against the wood structures, and like really interesting. But we were having some doubts as in how to integrate, because it says structural systems for mid-rise buildings, but we were not sure of if we had to like investigate like construction systems, like put samples or just focus on these points that are here on the list. Also, I know Luis was having trouble with open and non-combustible first floor.
Okay.
We couldn't get much information about that, and I don't really completely understand what it means. Like,
Okay.
so I couldn't
We
help
can
him
talk about that.
that much. Yeah, I couldn't help him in that. What else? I don't know if Luis has to add.
Luis, do you want to weigh in?
Yeah, for me, it was just finding enough information about, especially about the open first floor plan. I was able to find a lot about the shear wall, but I'm not sure about how you want us to present this information. If you want us to do maybe details or just examples of how structurally this goes together.
So, I don't know the answer to that, so I'm going to like just spitball here, right? I'm just going to sort of talk a little bit about how you might, how you might want to approach this. When you design a house or a building, for example, you actually design the roof, and you go through the effort of making sure that the roof framing transfers all of the loads to either columns or walls on the outside, on the inside. So you don't design the footings, for example, in the basement below grade and then design the roof. You design sort of in the opposite fashion. You design the roof first, and then you design the walls and the columns and the floors, and then you design the basement, right? That's kind of the way that you think about things as a structural engineer. I'm saying that because I'm going to flip the script again and go back to the instinct that most of us have as architects about the structural system. And I want to give you a very short, I hope, pep talk about this. And I have no problem saying this to you because both you, Luis, and Nancy are not from around here, right? So a few years ago, there was a glacier, right? A few thousand years ago, there was a glacier, and it came down from, correct? And it, at this part of the world, was frozen. And I'm talking about Detroit, because your structure is in Detroit. And then as it receded, as it started to melt, the glacier started to pull back. It started to recede. And as it did that, it began to leave soils and rocks and sand and silt, right? It began to leave things behind. And that is the constitution of the soils in the Great Lakes area, particularly in Detroit, particularly from the Detroit River up to about 8 Mile Road. So the soils in the Detroit area are really the soils that were the first elements of the retraction of the glacier thousands and thousands and thousands of years ago, correct? So I want you to understand that, because our soil is a very unusual condition here in the country. The soil in Ohio, the soil in Kentucky, the soil in Texas, the soil in Mexico is a little different. The soil here is a little unusual. So I'd like you to talk a little bit about the logical constitution of our soil, because at the end of it all, the parking garage, which you so eloquently talked about, is going to sit on that, right? So I think you need to understand the context of the subject. The subject is the foundation, right? The context of that foundation is the soils. So I think you have to talk a little bit about that. I'm not suggesting or asking you be structural engineers, but I'm sorry, technical or geotechnical engineers, but I think you have to, like, get into that so that we're aware of how that plays out, how the soils here play out, and how our soils are a response to this sort of geological inundation and retraction, right? This is a very, very powerful friction-based sort of process, right, as this happened. Then I think you need to talk about foundations as a subject, right? I appreciate, for instance, Luis, that you talked about or wants to talk about shear walls. Love shear walls. Can talk to you about that all day long. But I think the order of business has to be soil and footing. So I think you need to talk about concrete, right? You need to talk about what it is and how one does concrete footings up here, right? On a site like this, it's probably going to be what we call a mass footing, to be a major dump of concrete and reinforcing. So I think you need to talk about those footing types. Another footing type is the caisson, right? Which is a drill or an auger that goes into the soil, and as it's going into the soil, it sucks out the earth that has been drilled. And sometimes we do a sleeved caisson, where as the caisson is being drilled, there's a sleeve that's sliding down with it, so the walls of the caisson of the drill of the void don't collapse, right? So sometimes we do that, and the caisson goes down 70, 100, 120 feet, depending on the soils that we're dealing with, right? So you understand how I'm trying to link the soils conditions to the foundation conditions. So I think subject is the footings and foundations, and the context is the soils. You need to talk about that so that we all understand that. We as a class understand that. There's caissons, there's mass slabs, there's also mass footings, right? So mass footings might be like a footing that's, and I'm just spitballing here because I ain't a structural engineer, but like it might be like 8 feet by 8 feet by 8 feet, right? And it's going to take a point load of a structural column, right? So I think those are the kinds of footings that you're going to have to sort of exemplify or illustrate. Then there's this question, Nancy and Luis, right? You're dealing in an urban context. You're dealing with our Detroit soils, right? Oh, and by the way, Detroit's 250, 270, maybe 300 years old, right? As a settlement. It's not like Mexico City. It's not like Austin, a really, really old place. And so, well, let me just say this. There were buildings, right, once upon a time on this site, right? And then those buildings were torn down or burned down or both. And they took all those spoils away and they got rid of them. And they filled in the basement. The operative words there is they filled in the basement. Well, they just dumped crap in the basement and leveled it off, right? So that site is likely, almost certainly, filled with fill, right? That is not a suitable soil condition, right, that we can build on. So you have to talk about how we have to excavate, it seems to me, those spoils, right, those unusable soils, so that we can create the parking condition that you've been talking about, Nancy. Yeah. Then finally, as you talk about urban sites like the ones in Detroit, where you're building up to the John R. property line, right? You're building up to the Edwards or the Albert property line, right? You're building up to the alley property line, and you're building up to a residential lot line to the west of you. How do we dig a foundation? How do we excavate a hole, right? How do we excavate a hole that in section looks like my hand right now? Can you see me? I'm imitating the like this is the basement floor. These are the walls. This is one street. This is the alley. This is front to back, right? How do we do that and not let the soils spill out into the hole? How do we stabilize the walls at the street and the alley and the property next door? We do sheeting, right? We do sheet piling. So what do those look like? What are those products looking like? Okay. And how do they actually get installed? So I think you have to talk a little bit about preserving the integrity of the soils as we start to form up, right? The basement walls for your underground parking deck, Nancy, right? Mm-hmm. So I think your obligation is to sort of start all of those sort of things so that our designers in our class understand the complexity of doing a building. Just like I talked about the complexity of the ambition of doing a truly sustainable building, you know, with Paige a moment ago, right? It's really complex shit to do a bathtub of concrete 1 story below the street grade in the city of Detroit. Your kitty cat also wants to say some things.
I'm sorry.
I think to our class, Nancy. So I think that's part of it. Okay, so that's the first thing. That's all stuff that's kind of like below grade, at grade, and even below the foundations. That's conceptually, I want you to be illustrating like those ideas, those themes. The second thing I want you to think about is something Ash said in the first night, and that is that when we design buildings, be they steel with a composite deck of concrete, when we design steel with hollow core precast concrete decks, or we design a poured in place post tension slab deck and column system, we're talking about the horizontal deck. See, I'm actually moving up in the building now. Yeah. And so like that first floor is a floor deck that sits on the ground. How does it sit on the ground? It sits on the ground by columns, right? So in other words, that deck, here we go, props. Here's that first floor deck. You see my coaster here? Here's that first floor deck. We're gonna have columns, right? We're gonna have columns holding it up. So as few columns as possible, right? Because a column costs money. It costs money to buy, costs money to install. It costs money to excavate and do the footing for, whether it's a caisson or mass footing or the cube footing, if, for lack of a better term, because I don't know what that term is, because I'm not a structural engineer. But, right, like the more costly it is, right? So you want to minimize that. But here's the other thing. All of those like foundation decks, whether they're wood, post-tension, poured in place concrete, or steel with a hollow core precast, or whether it's steel with a composite concrete and metal deck, they have their own horizontal spans, right? That have limitations in distance. Here's the deal. All of those, all 4 of those, including wood, have a limit of about 30 feet. Yeah, some of them can go more than that. They get a little thicker as they span further, but they're all at about 30 feet, right? plus or minus 27, 28, 29. You start to get to 31, 32, and you starts to like shake a little bit because it's getting anxious, because it's holding up a lot more, because it's holding up a bigger amount of horizontal load, right? You following me? So here's the thing. 30 feet, 30 feet, 27 feet, 28, 29, 30 feet. Those are really magical numbers. And you're saying, well, why are they magical numbers? What do they have to do with like the alignment of the moon and the stars? No. It has to do with, fasten your seatbelts, parking spaces.
The design, yeah.
Right? Which is what you've been talking about, Nancy. So here's a situation where the research that you're doing for like parking has to, I think, stitch or zip together with the understanding of a structural system. And so we want to have, as you know, as few columns as possible. But all of those floor decks have a natural and wonderful limitation vis-a-vis parking spaces. Because in 30 feet, I can park 3 cars beautifully, right? So I think you have to talk about that for a moment as well, right? And I love that you showed the diagram for a parking lot, but I want you to consider an overlay of the structural system on that parking lot, because columns impact, right, the layout. So maybe what you do is you show us our site plan, Nancy, and you show us the boundaries of it. Show us where a couple of stairways might be, irregardless, or regardless, because irregardless is not a word, irrespective of what's happening above. But you sort of take that plan and you show 2 stairways, and you show an optimal layout of a parking deck below grade with that dimension, 160 by 1, whatever our lot size is. And how are you going to skin that cat? How do you do a grid in that layout? So help us, right, by laying out a plausible and efficient deck, right? I think that would be useful for everyone. And then what happens if there's an L-shaped building or a bar building sitting upon it? That adds to the conversation later for each of the students, but at least you can suggest where a column grid will go. And I'll want to look at that on Tuesday with you, because I have additional things that I want to talk about when you illustrate that. So that's the first floor deck, right? That's that horizontal first floor that's sitting on the columns of the grade line. And then we can talk about all those things that you just talked about: wood as a combustible material, steel or galvanized metal framing as a non-combustible material, but the curtain, right, the curtain wall, the studs, structural conversation will impact the another thing, right? Because the more studs I have in a wall to hold up materials that are hanging on the curtain wall, actually limit or can limit the sizes of openings and windows. So I want to talk on Tuesday with you guys about that concern. So I think I've loaded your wagon enough with thinking about the soils and the strata of our soils in Michigan, in Detroit, as it relates to the glaciers. I think I've talked a little bit about footings, so I think you need to sort of explain that to us. I think you need to explain columns and the spacing and the layout of that. I mean, your research is sort of on the parking decks, Nancy, conceptual, right? It's kind of theoretical, but now I'd like to see a practical layout as it relates to our site, so that it gets the gears going for everyone. And I think that would be good. And then we'll talk a little bit about We'll talk a little bit about the framing and the wall systems as we move up the building, including shear walls, right, Luis? Including shear walls where the shear walls actually inhibit the racking and the twisting, the lateral movements, right, of columns and walls that are acting together. And shear walls, I think Luis would probably suggest to you, happen in wonderful ways when you walls out of stairwells and elevators, right? That's a good place for them to at least start that conversation. But maybe, Luis, you can have a diagram that says, look, guys, if you do 4 or 5 floors of units, my suggestion, Luis says, my suggestion is that you demise, right? You partition each of those units so they stack vertically, right? So one unit sits directly over another unit, like at a Holiday Inn, right? And then the demising walls, oh my goodness, someone's getting killed in my house. The demising walls can also become shear walls. And show us, Luis, what a shear wall is, right? Is it X-bracing, right? Is it heavily reinforced concrete masonry? That kind of thing. And a diagram, right? A diagram that shows that, I think, would be very helpful. But talking about how we need shear walls, why, and what's the sort of simple strategy, right? The simple strategy for executing and implementing shear walls in our building, in buildings like this, not in all buildings, but in buildings like this. How do we calculate shear walls? Like how do I go about calculating the area quantity, the minimum area quantity of shear walls in a 5-story building like this? Cool? Overwhelmed?
So about open non-combustible first floors, what does it mean?
So this is an important consideration. So what you need to understand is, and Joshua and Eric can maybe have a conversation with you about this, because they're getting into the building code and they're understanding, you know, separated uses, non-separated uses as it relates to a mixed-use building. But here's the punchline, right? Here's the point. The stuff that's happening up above, vis-a-vis residential, and the stuff that's happening below the first floor, vis-a-vis storage / cars, right, has to be rated in terms of construction assemblies to be non-combustible. That means they don't burn, right? And that assembly is a non-combustible podium, right? A podium is a base on which all of those wood and metal stud sticks or whatever you're using, right, to do the walls and the floors up above, that first floor is separated in its fire rating from everything else above it. So a non-combustible podium is something made of structure, columns and deck, right? The second floor level, first floor ceiling. It's made of stuff that doesn't burn fast. It's got to hold everybody making their way down and out, right? So a non-combustible podium is usually made of steel or concrete or both, right? Because those materials have an intrinsic slow burn rate. They do burn, they do melt over time, but it takes so much time that you all have the time to evacuate a building in the event of a fire catastrophe, right? So it's usually like a 2 or 3 hour horizontal separation between the stuff above and the stuff below that first floor, right? Are you good?
Okay, yeah, so it's like fire-rated walls and like an enclosure fire-rated material.
It's a fire-rated floor deck floor.
Mhm. Okay.
Now the columns will be fire-rated because they are steel and may have a fire-resistive spray on them. I think Joshua and Eric will tell you if that's the case or not. But they will burn much slower than like wood columns, right, or timber columns, right? But here's the other thing. Remember how I said that in the parking level we only want to have columns in the parking spaces every 30 feet, 27, 28, 29, 30 feet. On the first floor, my recommendation to all of you, you're talking about structural systems, Nancy and Luis, is that you want to have as few columns as possible in the first floor whatsoever.
Okay.
Now you're probably going, well, why? What's the point, right? Right. The point is that in the first floor, you're going to have retail spaces, right? And retailers don't want to see columns because columns eclipse or block the view of their beautiful Hallmark cards or the beautiful fireplace in the restaurant that they've designed. So the floor deck wants, right? The floor deck, right? Can you see that again? The floor deck wants to like have huge spans. So they almost want to span to the extent that it's possible, right? So here's what happens. Do you follow that, Nancy and Luis? Thumbs up?
Yeah.
So as the spans, as the second floor sitting upon the first floor spans greater distances to promote an open or clear floor area, you will have columns. But those columns may not sit squarely or concentrically on the columns in your parking lot. So there will be something in the first floor slab, which is sitting at the grade elevation, where you will have transfer beams that are really thick that take the point load from above and transfer it to a point load below. Do you follow that?
Yeah.
I'm going to grab 2 pens. I'm probably going to look like I've got a problem. But so I don't know if you can see the silhouette, right? So here's a column in the first floor. Here's the second floor up here, right? It's up here at the window sill behind me, right? And then here's a column down below in the parking lot. Do you see that? Do you see how they do not line up? This may happen in your floor plans. When that happens, right, the hand, this thing, there's going to be a beam there that transfers the point load from above to be absorbed by the column in the parking floor. Those are called transfer beams. So that's something else besides the footings, Luis, that I think you need to explain as we get into these things. It's all cool stuff, but here's the thing, it's really logical. And I'll work with you. I'll work with you on that. What I would suggest that you do is go back and listen to the video of this 20-minute sermon on the Mount about structural framing and soils and footings and together, and make sure that what we are talking about is a little bit clearer to you. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Thank you.
Is there anything else that we need to go over?
No, I think that's it. Luis?
Yeah, I think I'm good for now.
Cool. Thank you, Nancy.
Thank you.
Thank you, Luis.
Thank you.
Okay. Michael, are you next? Are you the one we're going to talk to next?
Am I? I can be.
You can be. I love that. Love that energy. How's your mom and dad doing?
They're doing all right.
Good. Tell them I said hey.
Hang on, let me get set up. You see what I'm looking at? Okay,
Oh,
so
you're doing it in Rhino. Wow.
I started with the larger site overall.
Gotcha.
So this is like 1.5 mile radius.
Beautiful.
Brush Park is right there. All of the buildings surrounding it are just blocks, but they're about the right height.
Yeah.
Roads are about the right width. And then you can turn anything off you want. Roads. I have the parks mapped out, so I can make those separate. But those are the parks within the adjacent area.
Yep, I see that.
That's pretty much it. But I mean,
I think Carmen and you may need to sort of talk, Michael, because I think you have some ability to give her some data and mapping opportunities, because she's talking about zoning and that sort of thing. So she may, I think you just may need to sort of chat with her for a second. She's actually down in Mexico right now, but that doesn't inhibit her.
Yeah, so
I'm kind of in, I'm stumped on something here.
Mhm.
I don't know how to go about explaining this. I mean, in my conversation with you all last week, I said that I want you all to be designing buildings that are relational to the existing context, right? The existing carriage houses and the existing mansions, like the Ransom Gillis house, the historic house next to our site, the apartment building, and anything else sort of physically in the context of things. And you've been representing that in this model. That's all good, right? But I also said this. I also said that I'm wanting you to be understanding your role as architects, right? As being asked to, assume Hamilton Anderson was not at all invited to do the building that's being built there right now, right?
Right.
Assume that you got that gig, that each of you, all 13 of you, got that gig, either together or as an office or individually as individual architects, and that you were going to be like working like Hamilton Anderson did, Michael, with Merge, with Studio Dwell, with Brian Hertini's firm. So I don't know that I can share the SketchUp model that we hold of all those buildings, because I think I'd get in trouble. So let me ask this question. If you take digital photographs of the model Dean Zoyas did for the sales center, which is something that you can walk in and go see, could you import that into the Rhino model?
As textures, yes. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. Could you model the stuff that's being done in City Modern Detroit right now if I didn't steal the SketchUp model, for example?
Probably. Wait, what is City Modern Detroit?
City Modern Detroit is the development where this site is. City Modern Detroit is a website, and it's the name of, right? It's the name of that development. And Dean Zoyas built the model, the physical model. Dean has the SketchUp model. Do you know him?
Dean. So it's
Zoyes?
No.
You should contact Dean.
Okay. Let me write that down.
I'm giving it to you right now. Oh, he's in Ferndale. You need to contact Dean and say, Dino, I'm in Mark Farlow's undergraduate studio at Lawrence Tech, and we're looking at 124. We're looking at the site called 124 Albert, right? That's the at City Modern Detroit.
Mm-hmm.
So I gave you all of that, right? And we're designing a building there, and it would really help me because I'm helping the class build a Rhino model of the context. Can you share that Rhino? Can you share that SketchUp model with me? It's only for academic purposes. We won't use it for anything else. And I think he could. So that's one. So if you did that and he gave it to you, you'd have a spot on interpretation of all the buildings that are represented in that aerial perspective in the City Modern website, okay? The fallback step, if he can't give it away, if he can't share it, the fallback step is to get in your car, drive to the sales center at City Modern Detroit, which is stunning, by the way. It's beautiful. You got to go see it. And it's right on the job site. It's kitty corner from our site. And you just knock on the door and go in. It's a double wide trailer wrapped in rusting perforated metal screen panels. And the inside is beautiful, right? And act like a buyer. Or just act like, you tell them you're my student. And say, Mark from Hamilton Anderson said I should come and look at the model. He said it's really beautiful. Well, this is so, can I take a couple of pictures? You know, because everybody does, because you got your phone. So take a couple of pictures of it. And if that helps, use those to help image the model for everyone.
Okay. My goal, or my plan for assuming the fact that I wasn't going to get a SketchUp model is I was going to focus in on just our site. So here, let me hit screen share again.
Yeah, I think that's a good goal, but and that's why I don't think the stuff that is going to be built in City Modern Detroit is really, really critical, but it would really help if everyone had that. That's what I'm That's what I'm trying to give.
Would you say there's a certain area that I should get in a higher detailed model if this is like, say, a 3 model radius around it?
So I wouldn't get, so let's go into the site.
Site is, that's Bush, but we're like right there somewhere. Hang on, I gotta look at the address.
Can you mark it or draw a boundary around it?
Yeah.
Because sometimes, Michael, the cursor on your computer doesn't line up with the image that I'm looking at. It's a wonky thing. When you watch this, you'll see what I mean.
Okay.
So our site is in the lower left of this.
I'm trying
You need to pan left a little bit more.
Left.
Yeah, our site is so you don't have any street names on it, but
see this box?
Doesn't line, your box is not lining up with what.
Okay, tell me what
You
I
need to
see
color
that.
in your site. That's the only way I'll be able to see.
Yeah.
But I would say within like 3 blocks.
It's
Actually,
in-
zoom in a little bit more.
John R.
Yeah, zoom in a little bit more, and actually center the site on the screen if it's possible. Because right now I'm looking at the Presbyterian Villages. Yeah, keep panning left.
Here, let me pull up Google Maps. I don't know where I'm at right now.
Okay, yeah, because your model is different than the reality. So
It's
close
just
out.
the
Close
streets.
out the Rhino model, or pull it off. Southwest corner.
Hey, can you see that?
Or Edwards, rather. I'm sorry. I keep thinking of Albert for some other reason, but the Edwards and John R. So there's the L-shaped building is the Presbyterian Villages right next to the text that says Brush Park.
Great.
That's by Jude Fusco. Pan left. Okay, zoom in. Keep zooming in. Okay, see the house right there. Pan down a little bit more.
No, this way. That one.
Pan down. Okay, that house is that's the Ransom Gillis house. That
Okay.
swath of land there and above the alley, those 4 historic homes comprise City Modern Detroit. Now pan straight down, diagonal from that house.
This way.
Now go. So that
Dude.
you have to go back into that house again. It's the lot north of the high rise on the left.
North of the high rise. So this lot right here.
I won't be able to point at it. You won't be able to point at it because your cursor's not lining up. Zoom into the lot that you think I'm talking about.
Okay. No?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Actually, I think
You need to get the data that I gave you on the site and program documents, the dimensions and whatnot, and lay that into your Rhino model. Go back to Google Earth for just a moment, please. For me, I think it's going to be important that you model the building on the left
this one here.
fairly accurately. Pan north or pan up. The mansion west of us. Yep.
This one right there. Okay.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And then the Ransom Gillis house on the lower right.
This one here.
Now there's going to be some townhomes south of Ransom Gillis.
Right in this empty lot here.
Yes, sir. And there's going to be townhomes north of Ransom Gillis. And there's going to be townhomes east of Ransom Gillis and south of Ransom Gillis. They're all the same. And if you take pictures of them at the sales center, that'll help you a lot. And if Dean can give you the SketchUp model, that'll help you all the most. Call Dean tomorrow. Let me give you his number. Oh wait, I'll share with you his contact. He's in Ferndale.
Okay.
Where are you, Michael? Where do you guys live?
I am in Livonia.
Okay, I just sent you Dean Zois's contact.
To my email?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Okay. You should be good. Let me know how that goes, and try to contact them tonight or tomorrow morning. And maybe if you email them, Michael, copy me. That always helps elevate the sort of legitimacy of this ask.
Okay.
Right?
Mhm.
And you know what? I think Dean knows your mom and dad. So, you know, this might be one of those moments where you actually have to like name drop.
Can do.
Okay, I can do. Good. I'm glad to hear that. So let me know if how this goes. Try to get to the sales center tomorrow if that's possible, or Saturday, and try to mobilize by either going there or contacting Dean to get that data for yourself, so that'll speed your effort along.
Okay.
Okay, and then take the data that I gave you in the program brief that talked about the site and the boundaries and all of that stuff, and drop that into the Rhino model so that everyone has the same data for that. Okay.
I have the program brief. When you say that information, where is that on the program brief?
Site and building program.
Oh, that's in text, is what you're saying.
Yeah, well, you got to draw it, right? You have to sort of model that site.
Oh, this is a drawing of our site then.
Well, you know, that's your site. Yeah, that's your site. And the thing over here to the left, that's the historic property that I'm talking about.
Okay.
Over here.
Yeah, I'll make sure that's different
and then,
from everything else.
Thank you. And then on the first plate of all of the drawings, Michael, this one, that's the footprint of everything in City Modern Detroit.
Okay.
And our site is this site over here.
A3.
A3. Yes, sir. All right.
Okay, cool.
You should be good to go.
I think so, yeah.
All right, cool. Thanks. Have a nice holiday.
You too.
Okay. Have I visited with everybody up to now, up to tonight? I think I have. Have I left anybody out, or does anybody need to, we've sort of gone through this. Does anybody have any new questions that need to be raised amongst all of you, that you can share the question with me and we can answer it? Or does anybody need to visit with me after class? If not, I'll let Ash know that you all are ready for him, and he can come to you. Okay. Okay, he's going to be, he's aware now of the fact that we're done, and he should be here any second. To the extent that he's, you know, not expecting us to run till 9 o'clock or so, but, and then Paige, I just got an email from you that I just saw. Are you taking 2 studios? I can't hear you. Wow. How did that happen? How are you able to take 2 studios at the same time? Wow, that's That's murder. That's suicide. That's scheduling suicide. Oh, you just froze. I see. Who are you taking for that page? It's canceled. Yeah, bummer. Your instructor? Oh, Ed, good. Oh, well, so Ed would be lovely, right? As another source, a resource for you to sort of engage and rely on for his massive interest and knowledge and resources for sustainability. So definitely rely on your faculty, your other faculty for that. Okay. So I don't know if I have Ash's cell number. I do. No, I don't. I have his work number. So I think what I need to sort of suggest is, since we're all done, that you kind of go about your business and continue working or working on other things, and then wait for him to come back. I will, that'll give you a break, and I'll be able to eat some supper. And I'll be back when he gets back. I'll keep an ear out for my phone. He joins you, but I'll need to keep the class open until he gets back, okay? And if he starts and you're not around, again, this is recorded, and you'll be able to the session if you miss a few moments of it. So I'll let you all go for now, and I'll be back in a few minutes. Okay? Thanks. Josh, where do you work again?
THA Architects.
Who are they?
Who are
Is that-
they?
It's not. That's not Wiggins Ticknell. Is that the old firm of Wiggins Ticknell?
No, it's not. It's Tomlinson Harburn.
Oh, right.
We just had our 60th
How big are you guys?
anniversary this year.
Yeah, you guys are a major. Yeah, you guys are a major deal up there.
Yeah, we were kind of the go-to for all the schools and stuff.
Mhm.
And well, we've done a lot of other stuff than that, but that's kind
And do
That's
you
kinda what we do
and
now.
Eric both live in Flint itself?
yes.
Awesome. Do you know? Oh, good grief. Oh, she's gonna kill me. She works for Jeff Ferwada.
I guarantee I do. Not Miss Berger, right?
No, well, maybe she just got married. I'm not sure.
Blonde hair.
Oh, I know how I can do this. I can find it really quickly.
Who else do we know that works there?
Bear with me. Brianna Campbell.
Yeah, that sounds familiar. She's she's taking online courses, isn't she?
She is. She was in my online studio last year, here and last spring, and I think maybe she hasn't graduated yet, but she is from Flint. She lives in. I think she lives in Grand Blanc, and works for Jeff Ferwada. And then Tim Miller, he lives in Grand Blanc and works in Flint as well with a different firm. And I can't remember the name of his firm.
What was his name? You cut out there. What was his name?
Timothy Miller.
I don't know him.
He's a little bit older, and he's a former Marine.
Where did he go to school?
He's at Lawrence Tech. He's in school right now.
Did he take his undergrad anywhere else?
I don't think so. I think I know what it is. There was a big gap between, remember I said he's older?
Yeah.
There was a big gap between when he finished undergrad and when he did his graduate work.
What was her name again? The one at
Brianna.
I think she went to Baker too. I'm fairly certain of that. I think she's a transfer student to LTU, kind of like we are. Maybe not. Maybe I might be wrong. But
Baker is like a business college. Is that right?
Yeah, primarily.
Yeah.
Yeah, but they they now don't have it anymore. They had an architectural construction technology bachelor's degree.
I see.
That Eric and I both took, and that got us about 75% of that transferred to LTU. So it was pretty good.
And how far along are you in school right now? Are you a senior then?
We're not in the master's program yet. We need to take probably 4 more classes after this one.
Right.
To be in the master's program.
And are you taking all of your undergraduate classes online?
No. No, we have a math class on campus Mondays and Wednesday nights. So that's fun.
Holy crap.
Yeah. That's calculus.
Are you serious?
And, it's actually been a real struggle for us to be able to find classes that that we can take and not work at the same time. But
well, if it's any consolation, I'm sorry about that. Aside from critical practice in that summer program, the entire master's experience at Lawrence can be online.
Yeah, and that was one of the main reasons that we chose LTU, was because of that. So we're excited to get to that level.
Yeah, I don't know that all of those other online classes at that level will be as wonderful and as interesting as our class will be. I don't even know if they're interactive the way our class is. I think I talked about that last Thursday night, but I think that's one of the things that's really interesting to me about the fact that it could be online, because it allows us to meet lots of students from places like Flint or Grand Rapids or Traverse City, right? Or Chicago or wherever, that like you can't be in Southfield on a Monday night easily, at least, to take a calculus class. So it allows us to like interface with and meet a lot of people that we wouldn't normally meet. And I think that raises the humidity level, right? In terms of the quality of the conversation, the quality of the students is different and better in many ways. So I definitely, and I like the convenience of it, right? I mean, I'm drinking an adult beverage right now, and I'm going to be eating dinner in a moment, but I couldn't do that if we were taking the calc class together, right? If I was the professor for that, which would never happen anyways, but and you were the student, I wouldn't be able to do that. So there's some convenience that I think weighs in on this. So yeah, you're paying some dues now, but the dividends will, I think, become more apparent as you get into the grad program. I'm sorry about the drive down though. That's a long drive, and the weather's fine now because it's only the second week of school, but God.
We've been pretty fortunate with driving and weather. We've never really encountered too many issues with that. But speaking to the online, go ahead.
I was going to say, I think I-75 just opened up yesterday, so that has made maybe things be a little bit different or better. But I don't think I-75 at Square Lake going north has opened yet, so you probably still have to go through Pontiac and jump on somewhere north of that.
We actually take 96, and it's 2 minutes faster, says my phone. We take 23
Really?
south to 96 and ride that over.
Yeah, because you're going the opposite way of the rush hour traffic.
Right.
Yeah, it's sort of like the two legs of the triangle. It's not like 75 is the diagonal. I can understand that.
Yep. But to speak to the online format, I think it's really helpful, or will be really helpful in 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, when society starts to move more towards that working remotely format. And I think that maybe that's something that has I don't want to say has been overlooked, but maybe hasn't been fully recognized yet, in that the other benefit to this type of format is it's helping to push society more towards that sustainable aspect that we were just talking about, where,
Yeah, sure.
you don't have to commute to the city every day. Maybe you're only doing it twice a week, or something like
Yep.
that.
Right, right. Yeah, I'm sure I'll be dead by then when we all recognize how wonderful this invention, this experiment was. But yeah, again, convenience is kind of like the devilish term for it, but it is definitely a more sustainable sort of experience for me personally, and I'm finding that value. I have to tell you, I was like. We were just talking with Paige a minute ago, and she told me that she wanted to take a class over the summer, but it didn't have the enrollment level. And I'm thinking back to 2010, in the summer of 2010, I think it was Edward Orlovsky that asked me if I'd be willing to teach in the fall. And I said, sure, I'm down with that. That could be a lot of fun. And so I started like reviewing the syllabi and talking with some of the faculty and thinking about like the project that we would do and looking at, emails that had studio briefs attached to them from the other professors. And I kind of got all wound up about it and got excited and started planning on it and told the boss that I was going to be teaching this thing. And then suddenly I get an email in like August, and they said, oh, we don't have enough students. We're canceling the class, just like Paige was talking about. And I'm like, oh, it was just like, and it's like, that really sucks. I mean, and that's kind of the life of an adjunct, right? I mean, they can cancel a class that a full-time professor might be enrolled in or could link to, because they have maybe other classes that he could teach in a minute, and he's already committed to his pay, right? Because he's part of a contract. But with adjuncts, they're hired on as needed, right? And they're let go as they're not needed. So for me, it was like, oh, I got all excited about this. I started thinking, I started putting skin in the game, and then suddenly I had to put the brakes on, and they weren't able to extend a class to me because there wasn't enrollment. And it was like about 2 weeks later, I get a phone call from Martin Schwartz. I don't know if you've met him, but I was his best man. He was my best man. We've known each other since our days and our time together at Mississippi State University when we both taught there. And you can blame me for bringing him up here. And so he calls me and says, would you like to teach a grad studio? And I said, well, sure. Hesitant, because I thought, oh, well, this is going to end up as a bummer, but I said, sure. And he goes, okay, great. And he pauses, and I go, and I've known him since '84. And he's pausing, and I said, so what's up, Martin? I call him Marty. I go, what's up, Marty? And he goes, well, it's just that. I go, what? He goes, well, I said, what's the deal here? Are you asking me to teach with Ed Orlovsky? Or are you asking me to, like, I wasn't sure what he was getting at, because I was sensing that he was apprehensive about something. He goes, no. I said, because I have no problem co-teaching with Ed or anybody. I like all those guys. And he goes, no, it's not that. I go, what? Is it that you don't have enough students, but you think you might, and you can't offer me something for sure? And he goes, no. It's a graduate program it's in our graduate program at Lawrence Tech, and I don't know how to explain this. He goes, are you aware, he says, of our online effort? I go, no. I mean, I didn't even know about it. And he says, well, we have this online program where, we've been able to somewhat weather the financial crisis in terms of enrollment by extending classwork toward a graduate degree in architecture, a master's degree in architecture at Lawrence Tech, with an online protocol. And I'm like, what? And he's like, no, it's actually really interesting. And all but 2 classes are able to be offered online. And he said, critical practice is one of them and thesis is the other. The Advanced Design Studio today was called Thesis back then. And it was one studio broken into 2 semesters. It was one project done over the whole year. That they've changed that since then, but it was that. And so I said, oh, thank you. So I said, awesome. So I said, okay, so what are you saying? And he said, well, I know we're never going to do the critical practice studio online because we bring in professors from New York or the Netherlands or New Mexico or wherever, and they teach every 2 weeks. They come in 4 times the summer semester. The students come in 4 times or more. And that class will never go online. I go, okay. He goes, and the thesis studio is the next class, the final class really, that we want to launch as an online format. And my eyes are starting to cross over. And he says, and we'd like you to do that. And I'm like, wait, what? What are you talking about online? How do you teach a studio online? He goes, yeah, I know. Those are good questions. And I said, well, how do you do field trips or how do you do lectures? And I went through all the kind of routine studio experiences that you and I know. He goes, yeah, those are good questions. I don't know. We'll give you the tools, but I can't answer those questions right now. So I'm thinking, well, I need a drink because I can't figure this out. So he goes, so are you in? And I said, okay, I'll do this, but it was weird. I had a student from Toronto, Ann Arbor, Minneapolis, Grand Rapids, and I think I had 2 more. I had one from Las Vegas, and I think I had one in Chicago, for example. Oh no, I had one from one was sort of locally, like Pages and Taylor. So someone was like, or Flint, someone was like an hour and a half away from school. So I had like 6 students, and we started meeting online, and I started telling people what I'm doing, and they were like, what in the, I was like, it was like trying to explain Cubism to the masses during the time of the Impressionist period. People had no idea what I was talking about. Like intelligent people that had degrees and educations in architecture, and they couldn't figure out what I was getting at. So I'm looking at my email box for Ash. It could be that he's driving home and he's just not able to. And you're very kind to listen, so thanks for that. You don't have to do this, but yeah. So this whole thing started this way, and I've been doing it ever since then, and it's really been this marvelous sort of gig, right? Because we're doing something that's never really been done before, and I'm really honored to be part of it. But it's actually been really invigorating because I've had these really long, fairly intelligent conversations with a lot of people from all over the world by this, fraternity of Lawrence Tech, which is really cool. So, yeah, that's been my life for the last almost 10 years.
It's pretty cool.
Wu, you could be in China right now and taking this class, or Nancy, you could stay exactly where you are and be in this class and get your whole degree this way. I just think that's really, really amazing. So Josh and Eric, have you guys had undergraduate studios besides this one at this point?
This is our first studio at LTU.
Okay.
So it'll be interesting. I'm excited to see the level of submissions that we receive. you know, Eric and I have been doing a lot more recently. I just recently got hired at THA. Eric's been working here for 3 years now, but he kind of got me into this place, got me the job, and because I'd known him for years since Baker. We were in AIAS together at Baker, but he got me the job, and the first project we
could you repeat that once, because you kind of broke up. What did you say? You were in what together?
AIAS.
Repeat that. You said you were in something together. I didn't catch that.
AIAS.
Perfect.
He was actually the president his senior year of the organization.
Yeah.
But so I hired in here, and the first project that I had worked on was a new central high school for the city of Flint. And THA had decided, they had dabbled in Revit before, but they had decided that, you know, they're going to really go with this thing and really explore it and see how far it takes them. And it's been really interesting for the past 8 months to see how that develops and how that plays out. And all these things that I had learned only a year before, being in the what classes are those? Jake's class, visual communications classes.
Right.
I'm now all of a sudden applying in this job. You know, we're producing these diagrams and these full-blown renderings and things, and putting together these design packages and stuff that we had never really done before, or they had done before at THA. But now we're using all these tools like Photoshop and InDesign and Revit, and so it's really interesting to see that evolution taking place right now, and then also experiencing it on campus, and just it's like the whole world is moving in this direction so fast.
Yeah.
It's really quite interesting.
That's great. So one of the field trips I did for our students was we went to Flint.
Where'd you go?
Can you? We did. We drove up to Flint on a Saturday afternoon, and can you imagine what we went to see? I'm going to be interested to see if you guess it.
When was it? Let me ask you that. When was it?
We took a field trip a few years ago to Flint to see the Flint Art Museum.
Oh, I was thinking you were going to say the Genesee Towers, because they were blowing that apart.
No.
It's not worth seeing.
The Flint Art Museum is designed by Frederick Fisher, and he's an important architect from Los Angeles, because he was one of the original and is still on faculty at SciArc, which is arguably one of the most important graduate architecture programs in the country. I'm trying to think if any of our current faculty went there. I'm not sure if Steve Schneeman did or not. Anyways, it's in Los Angeles. It's in Santa Monica, and Frank Gehry teaches there. Eric Owen Moss, Coy Howard, Frederick Fisher all teach there. And Flint, the Flint Museum, as an entity, or maybe the Mott family, made sure that he was hired, and he did the addition there. So I had never seen it, and I had always wanted to. So we took them there, and I took them there, and then I sort of gave a tour through it and talked a little bit about the art and the addition as well. Have you been to see that piece? Do you know it?
To the building?
Yeah.
Yeah, I've been in the building a few times.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they're actually building an addition right now.
Oh, they are?
Broke ground 6 months ago, and I think it's pretty much enclosed now. So that's
Do you know
kinda
who's doing it, Josh?
I could find out for you.
I'd be interested to
Do
know.
you know who's? We just got a site plan from them. Our office is literally a block away from that building.
That's a pretty part of Flint. I like that area.
Yeah, the cultural center is quite nice.
So the next time I go up there to see it, I'll stop by.
Okay, sure. Let us know.
Mhm.
Shoot me an email.
Of course. Yeah, I plan on meeting both of you.
Sounds good.
So
Can you connect on the global project? Is yours not united?
nothing yet. Then the other part of the field trip involved coming down to see Affleck House. Do you know anything about that? And have you been to that yet?
No, I haven't. I haven't been there. Eric's been telling me about that since allegedly since we were going to Baker, but I said no, that's not the case. That's not true. So we do need to get down there and check that out.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a big fan of Frank.
Mm-hmm.
I love most of his
too.
work, and so.
Have you seen any of it? Have you been to anything in person?
Yeah, I have been to Unity Temple in Chicago. Was gonna go to the Roby House, but they were closed that day, so that didn't end up happening. But
Well, Unity is in Oak Park, which is where most of the houses, including his own studio, was.
yep, and I walked around and kind of checked them out from the outside, but I didn't get to go inside, unfortunately.
The studio is just totally amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I have a very special relationship to his work and to Affleck House in particular. And since we're waiting, I'll tell you that story. I was a second-year student. It was and I signed up for a class called Frank Lloyd Wright. It was an elective class that as soon as I got into it, I realized I was not qualified to be in. In fact, they were going to kick me out of the class. But I sort of lobbied the dean to keep me in it and said, I'll work really hard. You know, all of the lies that the student will make. And then I started sitting in the class and taking notes. Look back at today and I have no idea what I wrote down. I was sure that I had copied literally everything the professor had said, but my notes are completely unintelligible. It was an 18-week class, and it was about the 12th week when the professor said, oh my goodness, I suppose we need to give you an assignment, because up to that point it had been mostly like a lecture class. And honestly, we weren't even talking about Frank Lloyd Wright. It was all about the architects from other parts of the world, like the arts and crafts movement, Macintosh, Lutyens. It was talking about the Jugendstil. It was talking about the secessionists in Vienna, talking about all the things that were going on in Europe architecturally in the time period, you know, contemporary or contemporaneous with Wright's work. So he had not even mentioned Frank Lloyd and Wright in the first 12 weeks. Here's Ash. Okay.
Hello,
Hi, Ash.
everybody.
How are you?
I'm good. I'm usually here, Mark, so on the computer. So once you guys need me, just shoot me an email like that. I'll respond immediately.
How are you tonight?
I'm good. Thank you so much.
Well, my session tonight, Ash, ran pretty smoothly and pretty efficiently, and we finished a few minutes ago. So some of them may need to be reminded to be here. Hey, Paige, could I ask you to maybe email everyone and let them know again? Or you know what I can do? I can re-invite them, and that will nudge them along, and then so just you can run your class now, Ash. I'm obviously eating some dinner.
Okay. Okay.
Sorry.
I just want to stand on whoever have a question, how they came so far with the research phase of the technical stuff, structure system, envelope codes, energy codes, sustainability.
Ash, this is Josh. Eric and I are working on codes, and I think we're pretty well set. I think we know what we're doing, and we've got a game plan, and we're just working tonight, kind of listening to Mark tell us about 30 days, and just kind of being involved. So we're sitting here in the background, just working away. No real questions at this time.
Alex Wu, who was working on the sustainability page.
Hey, Ash. I know I started looking into sustainability a lot with the building envelope stuff, and the resources you gave were really helpful. So I've just been doing that so far, chugging along. And then Mark gave us a lot of really good examples today to push off from. So I think I'm in a pretty good spot. I'm not sure about Wu, probably in the same boat. She seems to know what she's doing. So,
what are the I would say the attributes or the elements that you guys built your research around? What topics are you looking at?
Like in terms of technical stuff or in general?
Yeah, in terms of envelope.
Yeah, I know I'm looking a lot at like sustainable like HVAC systems with like the double panned walls and the different kind of structural outside systems.
Wow.
So I've been looking at that kind of stuff, which I found off of the stuff that you gave us. So that's where I've been heading.
It's the stuff that I give you guys is just some examples. It's not a Bible, so it's, you know, you can always extend it. But I would love again to I would not redistribute, but reassign some topics for each group of the technical group. But I'd like to tell you guys that you will inform us. You are our eyes. So you're not like Alex and Wu are not just doing double skin facade, sustainable HVAC, innovations in claddings and envelope, but I'm going to ask everybody to give us something in addition to his design. So these are, everybody will do that. polish something very unique in terms of enclosure design or new innovation that he came up with. So you guys inform all of us. It's not, you are our eyes, like Josh and Eric. Yeah, Arctic Code, Energy Code, ASHRAE, or IECC 2015, and they will tell us, you know, what's the values of insulation, what's the U values, what's recommended solar heat gain coefficients. For example, this is just a, you know, out of my mind, but everybody who's working on a technical, these technical elements will be required from you at the end of the project. So it's not, again, in a capstone, you will be required to make sure or to tell us that, hey, I'm perfect designer, but also my design works. That's the key for the lab here, to make sure that your design works. So every one of you will provide something about the codes, and I forgot to mention to Eric and Josh here, I'd love, of course, to give a hint on ADA as well, Josh. I'm not sure if I included that in my email or not. Just again, the broad spectrum, elevators, for example, elevators dimensions. You have certain dimensions for the doors, okay? You have certain dimensions for the elevator, for ADA. Parking, if we're gonna do a underground parking, certain spots near the elevators should be available for, you know, certain number of cars. And out of these spots, I think for every 6 spots, if it's required, depends on how many cars we'll have, every one of 6 spots, it has to be van accessible. So all this kind of stuff. Ramps, I'd love to see the slopes of the ramps. I'm not, you know, I'm not gonna make a dissertation on ADA, but again, these broad things that we all need when we design. Doors, stairs, okay, the opening of the doors and the stairs. If we need toilet heights, for example, right? Anybody knows how high is the toilet for an ADA?
Question on that then, Ash.
17 inches.
When you mentioned toilet height, to me, as far as this project goes, we're submitting a pre-design development proposal, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of what we're doing. And to that aspect, do we really need to know what heights the toilets are going to be at? I mean,
don't worry about it.
So do we need to go about the effort of including that in our assignment for this project?
And don't go for the toilet height specifically. It just
Okay.
came out of my hand, but
Sure.
just ramps, door openings. You have to have 36 inches door openings, for example, for ADA. I think for not toilets, I'm sorry, for elevators, you have to have, I think 5'3" by 4'8", something like that. That's your minimum. And I think Mark here has asked for a sort of a furniture elevator. So,
okay.
The reason that we have accessible or ADA accessible elevators in buildings like this is because, I mean, obviously, you know, a handicapper, someone that is experiencing a disability, perhaps in a wheelchair or a walker, needs to be able to get in and rotate around and activate the command buttons right on the elevator panel. But also, you you need the size of the elevator cab itself, particularly the floor, so that you can get a gurney, right? If someone has a heart attack, remember this is an age-restricted building, so it's all old farts like me living there, right? 55 and older. We're the ones that are gonna get sick. Right? You're gonna see ambulances coming and going at this building all the time, right? So the gurney, right, for an ambulance is one of the things that generates the minimum dimensions for an elevator as it relates to accessibility. The hi-hat thing that is just, I'm giving you a prompt on that. I mean, that's just to make the building work, right? That's to make the building practical. I mean, you don't have to show me the section of it, but it could be just a simple, notation or an abbreviation on the plans that it's an HH, right? A hi-hat. And if someone says, "What the heck is an HH?" and you say, "Well, I'm so, like at the jury, I'm so glad that you asked that question. That's for hi-hats, and that means that I have an elevator that will be reserved, right, for moving new tenants in and old tenants out, so I can bring a king-size mattress or a 7-foot couch into the elevator, and I don't need the footprint of a so-called freight elevator in order to accommodate that." So little subtle things that demonstrate your awareness of everything is really important. But I think the thing I love about this capstone studio is you kind of, and I think I've given you this reference before, you kind of got to show you're firing on all cylinders, right? You got to show a completeness, a comprehensiveness, you got to be on your game, right? You got to have everything and know everything. So you got to know the height of the toilet seat. You got to know the height of the elevator. You got to know the handrail width between both handrails in an evacuation stair, cause I got to know it, and you got to know it. So if I got to know it, you got to know it, and if I can still remember it, then you'll always remember it because you're learning it for the first time. So this is the stuff that makes up the examination for your licensure. It's also the stuff that, honestly, we task our younger design professionals to learn, where they go through the same thing in our office so that they can give us the same synopsis as the building is evolving. They learn it and then they teach it to the next generation. So I love how our profession passes this mythology on, because it's a really important mythology.
One more question for you, Josh and Eric. Have you thought of giving us, I'd say, a recommendation of what this building could be in terms of building types, type 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, Roman numerals? That's something also to look at with the codes. So not only the occupancy, the load, the people's load, the heights, but to give us some recommendations on what this could be in terms of building types. The one is concrete, of course, 2 steel, 3 masonry, 4 heavy timber, 5 is lightweight, light frame construction. So that could be another point to educate us with, since it's a multi-use, because every one of them has a sort of fire rating, fire restrictions, and since you have a residential above sort of commercial or institutional or whatever, this needs certain fire rating from the lower floors to the upper floors. So this is something that you could be looking at as well. And one more thing, I was reviewing, by the way, I have a studio same studio, but the on-ground version on Mondays and Thursdays. So I just came from the school around 5 or 6, and they were doing really great things today. Very, very thorough, and they taking even slightly more things, but Dan is a very comprehensive guy. He's just, you know, I'm a very warm-hearted person, so I don't want people to be killed. But present your findings smartly in a presentable way. For example, I saw a lot of PowerPoints today with like very condensed readings. I'm not gonna read all of that. You know, my professors told me, Ash, yeah, you are an A student, but do you think that I'm going to read all of this report that you wrote? Present the findings, your findings in a graphical way, in a readable way, and don't condense like everything. It's just, yeah, of course have some outlines to work with, but try to have your information presentable, readable, easy to digest. Don't like they were doing great. I do not blame anybody. It's just, but again, when you present to a client, okay, he or she's not gonna read all of that. But I would, you can, I said, yeah, well, you can do that, but I'm not gonna read that, so you have to give me a summary, for example. I'm just giving you a heads up, you know, when you present this to us. I think next week, Mark, Tuesday or Thursday?
No, I think it's actually the following week. I think, let me look real quick, because that's a good question.
Yeah,
I think oh, it is. It might be, right?
Yeah, ours due next week from today. I mean, the on-ground version. I think you had it next week for some reason.
Let me look.
I don't have the schedule in front of me, but
hold on. Where's my work plan? Well, I'll dig it up real quick.
That's okay. I think I have it here. Site. Studio work plan. Okay, here we go. Labor Day, holiday. Yeah, present. Oh yeah, well, you have it on 2 sessions. First session is on Tuesday, and second session is on Thursday. Yeah.
Yep.
Next week.
Gotcha. Yeah, here it is. So yeah, these are in effect due then. So long. For goodness sake. Yep. Here we are. So we'll have a session together with you, Ash, on Tuesday the 5th and Thursday the 7th, and then we'll go over that work together, and then you and I will sit down and review and evaluate the work accordingly. But I've also said to them, Ash, that they should look at like, I think that each of the students maybe picked a topic or a research theme that maybe aligns with something that they're kind of like good at or interested in. Like Paige is interested in sustainability, and Lynn is interested in codes and ordinances and master plans. So I think the topics, there were so many topics that it was almost inevitable that there would be a topic that each of them would kind of fancy like drilling into. But I've been really happy about that. But I also said that they need to like present the intelligence and the data they've learned about as it relates to this building in such a way that they can not only, you know, teach other people about something they love or are interested in, but that audience will be as smart about sustainability as she is, or the codes and the ordinances as she is, for example. Or in the case of Eric and Josh, they will be as knowledgeable about how to approach a complex mixed-use building by looking at like a code sheet or walking through the issues, so that when they sit down to design the building, they know as much as Eric and Joshua know, right? So it's mostly a dissemination opportunity, but it's also maybe it's an opportunity to get Paige, who's really interested in sustainability, to suddenly start liking innovative curtain walls, right? Because I can see the link right between those two. Or maybe, you know, she's interested suddenly in the zoning ordinance because that has to do with land use and open space and some of those things are linking to the issues and precepts, right, in sustainability. So my hope, I pray, right, that while they might have a siloed kind of expertise in one thing, that they kind of go, wow, I didn't know I'd like meatloaf with gravy. I had no idea that was going to be so good. So I'm so glad to learn about that in this studio. So my hope is that, you know, all of us can be experts, right? And that's what we're hoping for. That's kind of like what we're evaluating. But I'm also hoping, like from an educational perspective and also from a architectural and professional perspective, that they maybe discover something in themselves that they didn't know that they liked, and that adds to their arrow, to their quiver. They have more ammunition. They're better prepared because they're more confident, and I think that would be just lovely.
Can you tell us a glimpse, Paige, on share with us what you have done? I'm not putting you in the spot, but just kind of you know. Try to adjust if people are going so far.
So we can. I looked at work that Alexandra and that Wu had done, and I looked at work that graphical work that Luis and Nancy had done. I had good discussions with Eric and with Joshua. I looked at work that Michael has done. At work the other day that Lynn had done, but I don't see her here at this moment. So, you know, maybe Nancy and Luis or Wu and Alexandra, you could maybe just do a quick, you know, wham bam, thank you, ma'am, kind of pitch for Ash.
Anybody, just tell us what you have found so far.
I can read through the outline that Eric and I will be working from, if that works for you.
Yep.
Okay. We're going to start with occupancy and use groups. We're going to define it.
Great.
List the groups and establish the different possibilities that exist with this building. And under that heading, we're going to also discuss accessory and incidental use. And then from there, we're going to move on to building heights and areas.
Okay.
We're going to provide a condensed chart and explain how to use it. We're going to explain area increase for building frontage and reference the section. We're going to then talk about separation of occupancies, both vertical and horizontal. We're going to provide table 508.4. We're going to discuss section 510, special provisions. And then we're going to move on to...
Does it apply? Sorry, Josh. Does it apply? I want you to explore things that may apply to this building, not necessarily other building types, like mixed use, residential, so that we don't like widen the scope too much. So let's try to be focused, because again, at the end of the day, you and Eric are informing us on the possibility of codes, application, and don't forget the energy code. So I want one of you to, kind of concentrate on building codes and the other on the energy code. What do you recommend for us in terms of insulation values, U values? What code are we in under for this building by state of Michigan? We all need to know that. So codes again include energy / building codes. So thank you so much. That's great. Great to start with, but we need things that apply mostly to this building. Good according point. To the requirements that Mark had given us in terms of areas, how many residential units that we have, the parking requirements or the entrances, and the first floor requirements.
Hey, Alex, could maybe you and Wu briefly just do what I would like to call, like I call it in my office, a page turn? Can you just sort of give a quick elevator speech, a quick sentence about each plate, and then just say next, and then and then Wu do that with her stuff? Could you please do that?
That would be wonderful.
Yeah. So yeah, Wu and I are doing the innovative building envelope innovation, or building envelopes essentially. And she's taking more over of the innovation and case studies of that, and then I'm doing more of like a materiality and how building envelopes are like constructed. So we were talking with Mark earlier, and he suggested organizing my research, since it is such a broad spectrum in terms of like what building envelopes can be and what I was looking through, and just trying to narrow it down into like what can consist in an envelope, and if it's transparent or opaque, and the materiality associated with that, so like glass, metal, concrete, brick, and then examining those materials that fall within those categories, and then within that delve into like case study examples and then buildings that have done that, and then how it's applicable to our studio in general as a comprehensive design, like going forward. So if you're looking at like sustainability or lead points or whatnot, you'd have the best tools, or I would give the class the best tools to approach how they want to design the outside of their envelope to attain the sustainability or the or whatever requirements and codes that they would want it to be meeting within our context of Detroit, of course.
Hey, Alex, do you want to show, maybe screen share your stuff, and then Wu could do the same thing?
Well, I don't have anything like digital right now.
Okay.
Besides just what I showed you earlier. Right now, Wu does.
That's a good send up. Then let's actually move to Wu and let her screen share, please.
Yeah, sure.
Thanks.
So I was working on about the material innovation, and this is the concrete part. So I did some research about the eco concrete, the living surface concrete, bendable concrete, and self-healing concrete, and the light transmitting concrete, and the micro LED facade. There's a project, the example project, and photovoltaic coating and paints, and the liquid granite. I electrified wood, mushroom insulation, and electroactive polymers.
Wow. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and shows about how they worked, and some example for each one.
So maybe maybe after having listened to Ash talk a little bit more about aligning your research so that it kind of fits like a hand in a glove with a 5-story mixed-use building that has underground parking and residential in Detroit, right? Maybe it's important for you guys, Alex and Wu, to, because I love the sort of innovative stuff that's not even on the market yet. I can't even get it at Home Depot. And then there's the stuff that Alex is showing, like this is the stuff that everybody can get at the Home Depot. And this is why these are important, because they're available, they're conventional, and they're tried and true. But I think somewhere in between might exist some to sort of talk about maybe the stuff that we don't see, right? Like the stuff you're talking about is the stuff that we can touch and see and render, right, in our models and in our elevations. But there's stuff in the enclosure. Does this make sense? There's stuff in between the outside surface, that air film outside, and the air film inside. And it's not just studs and drywall. It's not girts and steel and sheathing, although that may be part of it. But I think you guys may need to talk a little bit about what happens in the wall enclosure that, we need to design for. Ash a moment ago was talking a little bit about the R values of the roof and the R values of the wall. And I think this is a really important expectation and obligation in an architect's work. We actually have to go through the software that's up and offered by the Department of Energy, right? ASHRAE 2007, I think, and we have to compute each wall, right? I have to go through and give the U values for the inside film, the outside film, for the drywall, for the airspace in the studs, for the sheathing, right? For the outboard insulation, maybe it's a closed cell polystyrene at 2 1/8 inches value, right? So ultimately, you may need to remind us as designers how the code wants us to compute the overall R value of a wall by computing the individual U values of it. That would be a good exercise, perhaps. Another thing is, a wall section is kind of like it's kind of like a deli sandwich, right? It's got bread and on top and bottom, right? And it's got meats and cheeses and tomatoes and lettuce and pickles and all of those things together, right? Like I can eat a pickle all by itself and it's really good, but when it's with a deli sandwich, it's amazing, right? So a wall is like that, right? A wall has all of these things in it. But I think the most important thing in the deli sandwich of a wall is not necessarily what it looks like. I can't believe I just said that, but it's not necessarily what it looks like, but it's the insulative product in that wall, right? So what is the stuff that's not on the market in terms of insulation? And I think Wu was talking about that. But what's the other stuff that I can get at the Home Depot, right? There's probably 25 different insulations. If you open up Master Spec, Alex, and you have to write an insulation spec section, your eyes are going to flutter in your head. You're going to go, oh my God, how do I even pick this? So I think you need to think about the sections of the section of a wall in terms of its insulative sort of aspect, and that could be bad insulation, loose fill insulation. That could be a mechanically sprayed insulation that's like a foam, like by someone like Icynene, and that fills that whole cavity. It could be a newspaper boric acid mixture that looks like oatmeal and fills that whole stud cavity so that there's no air space, there's no air movement whatsoever in the stud cavity. You can do closed cell polystyrene. You can do Thermax, which has an insulative value, and it's also a sheathing. So there's lots of products that I don't expect you to have a command of every one of them, but any one of them can be in play in a building like this. So you may need to like talk a little bit about what's in the wall and how that can contribute to a better enclosure. Does that make sense, Alexandra?
Yeah, I was thinking acoustics would be really interesting too.
Mm-hmm.
And that's another requirement, right? That, you know, in a building like this, in urban settings, the wall has to have a minimum STC. It has to achieve a minimum sound transmission coefficient, and so does the glass, right? So there's that in the code. And oh my God, you know, when you do one of these buildings, you're like, oh my gosh, it's really clear to me at the end of having gone through this exercise of designing a mixed-use building in Detroit or anywhere, that there's a lot of shit you got to know and as an architect, and very little of it, I can't believe I'm going to say this, very little of it has to do with the design. It has to do with the way the design is documented and detailed and assembled, and it's actually really fun to do that. It's like putting a puzzle together. You know, on a long rainy weekend, a big 3,000 piece puzzle, it's like putting a puzzle together. And it's really gratifying to do that. And hopefully you guys will have careers where, as project architects, right, you're going to be teaching people like yourselves in 10 years how to do these things. Because really, folks, this is what architecture is. That's the end of my lecture.
I think this blends well also with Josh and Eric if they're gonna talk about the energy code. So this could be sort of a crossing bridge also with the code, energy code requirements. And for you, may I suggest something? One other thing to explore or talk about, if you don't mind. Could you search BIPV, building integrated photovoltaics? I would love to see some sort of renewable energy systems in this class at the end of the semester. Any cool. Sort, even one or two. One is your minimum, two is your maximum. I teach a class on sustainability, sustainable building, sustainable building systems, and they make a conceptual design. They go crazy, so it's not like a schematic. It's just conceptual design. Could be a schematic, not like a full design on how they integrate these renewable energy systems into their design. So could you please add building integrated photovoltaic systems? It's called BIPV, to these nice chromatic facades, this glass that changes, like my glasses here, transitional.
Yeah.
We won't need the, these very crazy glass because we are not in Arizona like what we do on the on-ground version. And in the hell, we are building in a hell there, so we have to control the sun ultimately. Yeah, west and south facade, I think it has to be completely screened. I have to once I look at your design, oh my God, this design is in Arizona or is in New Mexico.
Yeah.
But thank God, it's here in Michigan, we don't need this excessive technological glass. But I would love to see any sort of renewable systems integrated with the facade. That's one of the guys, oh my God, that's crazy, Mark. He told me that now I know that you can integrate the PV modules on like a silk screen on the glass. But he said, he showed me what's called solar glass. So I don't see any of these dots that produces energy, but it's just crazy. I said, oh, where's the PV here? So he said, oh, Ash, it's, blended with the glass. I said, okay, you have to convince me and get me the specs for this in order to get really a good grade. I'm impressed. And as I told you guys, the wow factor is very important to me as well. So if you can provide me the company, the more details, how this looks like a regular glass, but it's a PV glass. Oh my God. I'll give you an A in this portion of research. Seriously, just impress me. Okay.
You hear that, Lou? You hear that, Alex?
New materials for insulation, as Mark just mentioned. Just get something from NASA. Yeah, students. Yeah, one of my students got me something that was in my grad class. Got me something from NASA. Oh my God! Fine. Show me that you have research capabilities. You can dig deep into a subject. That's one of the talents that you have to have as an architect in order to be successful. Anybody else?
Cool.
Paige or whoever, Mark, you want to choose somebody?
No, I mean, they all had things to talk about. Not everyone is here for some reason. I actually don't. I just realized that I have not seen Andrew tonight, and I'm not hearing from him.
Is not here. Carmen, Lynn.
And Carmen was traveling, but and she asked me to excuse her, but she will watch the class tonight. But I saw Rasha today, so I'm surprised she's not here and Andrew's not here. So those are the three that are missing. But suffice to say that we want to look at where you are in this sort of first module of the overall work plan on Tuesday next week and Thursday next week. Over the weekend, probably tomorrow or Saturday, I'll share maybe a roster for both days with Ash. We'll organize it together, and then I'll share it with you on Sunday so that you all have a kind of a batting order, right? That you will present in. And it'll be kind of you will lead a conversation by walking us through your plates. I'm also would like you to upload each of your research plates, your final plates in the format, right, to the Google Drive so that we can hear and watch you talk and look on a separate screen, if you will. The actual artwork, right? So that we can read along and watch you present, which is how we like to do it for the reviews, any of the reviews. So I think you'll want to upload that stuff to Google Drive before the class, if not sooner, on Tuesday and Thursday. And then you see, then everyone has, access to all of that material because it'll all be in that shared folder that we can then use like a dictionary we can go to, or an encyclopedia, we can go to it and look up sustainability, we can look up the building code, we can look up structural systems and become equivalent in our knowledge. So we're going to have reviews in class meetings 3 and 4, which is I'm sorry, 5 and 6, which is on the 5th and 7th of next week, and I'm really looking forward to that. And then at that point, we're going to really release you into with this ammunition, right? With this research ammunition, we'll release you into sort of the sort of design exercises of the project, which, you know, to Courtney's point a week ago, I suspect you're already starting to think about it, right? You're already kind of like, oh, I can't resist thinking about the site. I can't resist thinking about the building. And so I suspect that you're already like even putting some pencil to paper and drawing some things, and you'll be able to do that really, I think, hard, starting in the sessions, right, in Module 2. But to get to Module 2, we need to finish up with Module 1. And I can't believe we're already done with 2 weeks of classes. Well, good grief, that's gone fast.
Yeah.
Fasten your seatbelts.
This is like they started yesterday. I was just, oh my God, 2 weeks already? Oh my God.
Okay, well, I don't have any other things, Ash. I certainly don't want to hold hostage your class session. Do you have anything else that you want to go over?
No, I was just, if they have any question, if they want to show me like who, Nancy or Paige or Louise, I'm here for you. So just to, you know, probably steer things around a little bit to the right, to the
Louise
left.
and Nancy, do you want to show your work right now?
Sure.
Yeah, just very quick, like who? I'm not just.
Sure, I can.
Okay.
Yeah, actually, me and Louise were doing structural systems of mid-rise building. Actually started investigated for like underground parking facilities, basements, shear wall structures. But here Mark gave us was helping us in organizing everything. So he suggested we started from the soil to where we're gonna be putting our building actually, and go up into footings, because we can have a lot of type of footings, mat footing, caisson footings, and from there we have to analyze like the excavation part of the whole project, since it's going to be in an urban site. We're going to have constructions in some of the sites of the. So that's something to consider. Also, from there, we were going to be working up, thinking about columns, thinking about decks. Then we will be implementing about underground parkings. From there, I mean, we have a lot to look at. So yeah, we have to go up. Then we will be looking into like framing systems. We have a long list of things we have to.
Just a very quick comment here, the same as I said to Josh and Eric. Just did you see what Mark did here? A structure system of mid-rise. Don't widen the scope too much so you get lost in the middle. That's be focused. Okay, so that's my only advice here.
Right.
All what you have said is good, but don't widen the scope too much so you get lost in the middle.
Yeah,
okay?
we don't want you talking about high rises or Burger Kings, because those are different things and they have different structural impacts.
Exactly.
We're talking about 5 stories.
It doesn't really to us here.
Right, and we're talking about underground parking. And Nancy has a whole series of plays that just talk about parking, because it's a really important issue. What I've asked her to do is now take that kind of generic stuff that we can find anywhere on the web and try to calibrate it and dial it in, Ash, so that it actually maybe shows 50 cars, because that's how many cars you need to provide for, right? And is in a configuration, right, that's kind of like the size of the building, because we know that, right? So instead of a long, narrow parking deck, which hasn't, you know, which helps us understand how to do a typical parking deck, let's look at a more square floor plate, because that's what our site looks like.
Mm-hmm.
And so she's, I think, you know, starting to understand that. And I think Luis, he can talk a little bit about what he's been interested in, but I've encouraged him to think about the subject of structure in the context of soil, right? And the soils in Detroit are different than the soils maybe in Kentucky, right? Because of the glaciers. And so we need to understand the context of soil where the subject is structure. And so thinking a little bit about those typical footings that you might find in Detroit, whether they're caissons or sleeved caissons or mat slabs or cubed footings, thinking about the menu, right, of footings that they could come across, but also trying to link individual foundation work and column discussions with Nancy's research in parking and understanding that the grid of structure can actually be compatible with the grid of parking. And then we started to talk a little bit more about the second floor becoming a place where the structure of the residential units gets transferred eventually to the basement floor and the basement column grid through transfer beams and things like that. So helping us understand the three-dimensional, the vertical transfer of loads in a 5-story building like this, so that they reconcile in the basement, right? They reconcile in the parking deck.
It's to me, it's quite a bit of a challenge, Mark, this mixed use with the parking, because I would expect that they would have like different systems that they will use. Yeah. I would expect somebody will say, no, this is just, again, out of my head, brainstorming here, like say, okay, you know what, I'm just gonna, you know, bring all my columns. I'm gonna design, like, for me as one solution, and there is no one solution to a design problem. Okay, as I learned over 20 some years of work and practice and teaching, I would take Nancy's, for the first look, I would take Nancy's research telling me, Ash, you know, here is the optimum column organization that would take maximum of this number of cars. Okay, and I'll take this model into consideration, Nancy. I'll start playing all my project around it. I'll say, you know what, I might not need beam transfer or any transfer from above. My client is so cheap. Okay, so I'll take these columns from all the way up to all the way down. Okay, and I'll make it work. That's one approach. Okay, so this is why you guys are our eyes, you know, at this stage. Here's what could work. Okay, and of course, as Mark said, how we transfer, if we decided, for example, no, this Ash, you know, I don't like this idea. I don't want to be restrained with a 20 by 20 module or 22 by 20, you know, or 25 by 25. No. You know, I'm just gonna articulate my design around upper part, which is gonna be residential, and I'm gonna use the slow transfer mechanism to have like larger spaces, larger columns on the bottom. You know, I need like column every 40 feet, fine. So, you know what I'm saying? So these are two approaches to the problem that you guys, you, Nancy, and Louis will guide us through. Paige, anybody wants to?
I can talk.
Okay.
So I have a list of things that I'm focusing on. I'm going to touch on net zero buildings.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, those are very interesting. I'm going to try to find some examples so I can kind of piece together, kind of show what exactly it is.
Okay.
Optimum building orientation, which the file that you sent me really helps a lot. Water conservation, innovative materials, envelope resistance, including air infiltration, moisture drive, heat loss, heat gain. And then I'm going to do the climate consultant, which I've never used before. Is there any suggestions you have for me?
Listen, if my suggestion, go to this UCLA website. It's very easy. Again, it's enough for me to. It gives you too many things. Page, okay. It gives you windrows. It gives you psychrometric chart. It gives you what else? I think the newer version gives you sort of the elongation of the building. Try to play with it. The main reason I'm asking for climate consultant is it gives us the strategies for HVAC. Like I'll give you an example. Thank God we are building in Michigan. It's not in Alaska or in Arizona, but when we ran, this is again an example. I didn't know when we ran climate consultant for Tempe. We didn't have Tempe, we had Phoenix, so it's just very close, like 100 miles or so. We found that 73%, it gives you some percentages on the psychrometric chart on reducing the heat gain and shading. So this means that that's huge finding to me. So it automatically gives me, put something in my mind regarding the design of the southern, eastern, western facade in this climate. So I want sort of similar thing. Did I send you an example for climate consultant? I think I did.
Yes, I believe so. Yeah.
Yeah. Would like it's gonna be similar if, but I would love if you can just get your hands wet in the program and at least get us these strategies. What strategy? What things that we should concentrate on? Like in Arizona, that's sun shading. This means that they will use the highest low E coating that deter the sun heat ever built. They will have extensive shading devices on southwest facades, maybe east, because sun comes almost horizontal on these two. You need cooling, evaporative cooling. That's in there. So we need to know what are the strategies that would work in Michigan. What things that we should concentrate on when we do this building? Yeah, it's a heating dominated climate. So what's the efficient strategy here? What could be you're looking at net zero. So what could be a sustainable HVAC system in Michigan? What works?
Okay.
So you are our eye on this. Of course, orientation, we know that the elongation is east-west, but again, we cannot do anything about this because it's a given site. We don't have like a speculative office building, like a free land. We can make the orientation the way we want. Yeah, if we have this, oh my God, yeah, we'll go for it. If you are building in a 12 Oaks Mall, kind of a certain parking lot that they want to develop, yeah, we can or make the orientation the way we want. We'll make the elongation east-west, have more south exposure. But since we have a cube here or a square in terms of floor plan, well, we don't have. We'll take your your recommendation, but really we are not gonna do anything with it. So let's see let's look at the south facade. What can we do to get maximum heat gain in the winter? You know, if you design your building very well, when the sun comes in the winter, you will notice that your furnace does not kick off too often, right? So that's the solar heat gain. Okay. Nowadays they do combine. We do have two low E types, low emissivity glass. One that's applied when the glass is hot. This is for winter months, and there is one that is done for deterring the heat or reflecting the heat to outside. You could combine both. During the manufacturing process, you apply this hot applied low E to retain the heat inside, and you could use the other one to reflect the heat in summer. I could send you something on this as well.
That'd be nice.
Water conservation. We have a lot of rain, unlike Arizona. I told them today, you know, guys, please, I appreciate every single minute you spend on doing this research, but please try to bring things that are relevant to the climate. There is no rain there. Simply. So what are you gonna conserve? Yeah, it rains sometimes heavily at, you know, make a flood at some point if there is a hurricane coming from Mexico or whatever. Yeah, they got drenched, I think, last year. Sometimes, I'm not sure, last year or the year before, they had a lot of rain. Yeah, okay, we'll do some cisterns or whatever. But water conservation, of course, how to reduce, not just like building cisterns all around. There is no rain, so just think about the strategies that that's applied to your climate. It's like a site-specific situation, and do the things that we can use, not just, you know, mention it, fine, thank you, but will benefit. Again, you are our eye in sustainability. So what could we do to earn this building LEED certified? For example, this could be one of your LEED. Okay, what could be, what can we do? Not just you list the LEED. Yeah, we'll get point here and point there. This is you know, 60 for certified, 70 for silver, 80 for gold, whatever. No, what can we benefit from these LEED criteria to grab and use in this building? A bike rack, fine. Oh my God, I love you. It's an urban setting, okay, and that might be very good idea, extremely good idea. Okay, Detroit now is going really with this urban friendliness and, you know, bike racking and walking. So that could be one of them, one of these LEED strategies or LEED points. So
okay, that helps a lot. Thank you.
What else? So you said net zero. I love net zero.
Yes.
So you have to tell us. I'm really curious. What can I do in this building to make it net zero? 1, 2, 3, 4.
Okay.
I love you so much. You know, oh, she's my hero.
All right.
In order to make this building net zero, this is what we can do here. Okay. You can touch also, Paige, on, again, the renewable energy systems that could work. Yeah, some PVs here. Nice, not these humongous wind turbines. You can tell us how we could utilize, for example, the wind on the roof, for example, doing some that's a trend in some schools here, Ann Arbor public schools. when they designed Skyline High School by M14, they had a nice wind turbine on the top. So it's what we call it egg beater, which is the quiet one that doesn't do the whiff, this whiff that create noise. We don't need that. Okay, so there are some innovative way to incorporate wind energy on the roof. Okay, if you want to do a roof garden, or that's nice, just make sure nobody fall from the upper floor. Raise the handrail at least 6-8 inches. Mark would be our advisor on that. So
sure. I'm trying to get a hold of Rasha and Andrew as well, and I think I'm succeeding. I think they were anticipating coming in at closer to the published 9 o'clock time, but so when they get here, I'll mention that we're going to have to develop a kind of an on-call expectation, that some nights we might run a little long, and some nights like tonight we might run a little bit more sort of efficient, and that they need to be at least logged in if they're not if they're near their computer, so that we can engage them. But
yeah,
so
we can
continue.
Attendance and discussion are really important, even for a few minutes. Like, we love to see you. Like now, what I was doing is just listed the people that I talked to, or the people whom I saw.
Yeah,
that's
sure.
For records. So
yeah,
thanks everyone.
Courtney, do you want to go over anything that you've been researching?
No, I'm still good from.
Oh, can you maybe speak closer to your microphone, or?
I'll try turning it up.
You're maybe muted.
Now, I hear her, but her voice is kind of low.
Okay.
It's very low.
Can you hear me now?
You're about 3 on the volume scale. Do you have like maybe some headphones that you could talk into, Courtney? One thing I love about the online classes is that we rely on gestures and hand signals a lot more, which makes us all look
funny,
very passionate. So that's been kind of cool, learning how to be an online professor.
All right, can you hear me now?
For some reason, you sound like you're in a water barrel.
I raised my tone, my speakers. Yeah, now I think I can hear
your volume. Go ahead, Courtney. I'm sorry.
Okay,
I'm just teasing you.
I don't really need anything. I'm still good from Tuesday. Just kind of biting on.
Could you maybe just walk us through what you're looking at, what you're researching, and this is an age restricted building, right? This is for like people that are 55 and older that don't necessarily need any care or convalescence, but it's a building that has a certain community demographic, and why that's kind of a compelling phenomenon or demographic in itself, and what you've learned since then.
Yeah, I'm really interested in the parallel between millennials and baby boomers, and have actually talked with my own boss at work about it. I've talked to family members about it, and I'm just trying to get through some of the constructs about not constructs, but like predisposition thoughts about each generation. So some people think that there's a gap, but some studies show that there isn't as much of a gap as we think. So I'm looking at missing middle housing. I'm looking at the UN the two websites that you gave me about urban,
Yes, ULI.
ULI, yeah.
Yep,
And then,
and the CNU.
Yep, CNU. There we go. But I don't have much more updates than what I've talked about. I don't know what else to say. I don't know if I need to recap what I got on last Tuesday or this past Tuesday.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that it needs that, but I mean, if there's been any sort of new learned since our discussion that you want to share, that would be good. The goal, I think, is again to have you all sort of working the work in progress, right? The research in progress, and for you, I think it'll be kind of an interesting and unique challenge, right? To talk about these users as a group or as a demographic or as an end user in a building in a graphical way, a statistical way, and measuring quantity or describing trends or preferences or choices. So this is not as sort of rational as maybe the research that or Joshua or Eric or Courtney is doing. Certainly not as kind of like predictably sort of graphical as the way that Luis and Nancy will be doing it, but it'll be interesting to see how you approach that, right? And how you kind of tell this story without using a whole bunch of words that, as Ash assures you, we're going to be really difficult for us to read or to want to read. So I think it'll be compelling to see how you do that.
Yeah, definitely through some infographics. I've looked at a few examples already, and I know from past studio classes how to do a few of those. So I'm excited to do it that way.
Yeah, and all of you should at least spend 10 minutes, type in information graphics or infographics, go buy a, what's the name of that? USA Today, right? Go buy a USA Today and look at the weather page, or look at the business or investment page, and look at how they take, really, boring things like wind speed or the stock market, right? Not stuff that's boring to Tracy and me, but maybe it is to you, and how they are able to bring it to life in a graphical way. And I think that will be really, really interesting. I also think that the Wall Street Journal and the New York Times do a really, really wonderful job of that. The New York Times does an amazing job of like these interactive, in real-time mapping. They just did a series of mappings of all of the 9/11 phone calls in Houston and Beaumont. So they took an area, they took a physical map of that area, and they started dropping in all of the 5 or 8 word panic calls of the people right in that area, and it showed you what they said, when they said it, relational to where they said it from. And it's unsettling to see so much panic against a clock that's kind of turning. And just thinking about information as a graphical thing, as a narrative thing, is a really important attribute that an architect needs to have. And here's a good time, right, as a student, to learn these tools, right? There are books on information graphics, and actually when I teach my least favorite class to teach, which is practice portfolio, I actually make you all buy information graphics books because they're just amazing. So in any event, it'll be compelling to see how you handle that. But the Wall Street Journal, the New York Times, and even the USA Today are very expedient, quick examples to learn from. But again, just spend 10 minutes. All of you, type in information graphics. You will love the graphical invention and innovation that they bring, but look at one or two of them kind of carefully and look at, like, in terms of like matrix, comparing this to this, like look at what they're trying to compare. And those things are also pretty interesting. Rasha and I'm not sure if Andrew has joined us.
Yeah.
No.
Here.
Yeah, I'm here.
Is he? Oh, here. There he is. There he is. Andrew's here, and so is Rasha. So, you know, I tried to get a hold of them earlier, but I just got a hold of them now. So, I'm sure they can like go back in for about half an hour or so and sort of listen to the general comments that you and I were making. But like you guys, if you have anything you want to share tonight with Ash, since the conversation's on Tuesday night, this would be a good time to do that.
I don't have anything new.
So that was a prompt, Rasha. That was a prompt, Andrew.
Sorry, my microphone is being weird. So we're doing, I mean, I'm not sure if you know, Ash, but we're doing hybrid buildings.
Mm-hmm.
We're doing mixed use and hybrid buildings. So
right, as your research thing.
Yeah, as for myself and Andrew, and we're looking at, we found an article that talks about the positives and negatives of mixed use and hybrid buildings, and we're going to talk about that, but also we're going to look at case study very in depth. So choose something that's relative to our building, not something that's a very large scale, something similar, and really get into depth to understand how it's being put together and what are the conditions and how is that comparable to ours. And today I also picked up a couple of books from Mark that I'll be looking into as well to talk about hybrid and mixed use buildings. So we're looking at that. Mark also gave me a book about it was about the Brush Park one that they're doing right now. So I'm gonna look at that and see how again see what the comparisons are and how can we draw that and how we can relate that information to all of you guys. So yeah, that's what we're looking at. We're just right now. As soon as we choose a building, I'll email you. I'll email both of you a building that we're going to look deeply into. It's just been difficult finding one that's been, like I said, that's similar to our conditions because many of them are so on a large scale.
Right.
But Mark gave us many options other day, so we're gonna look through those that list and choose something, as well as have other maybe a matrix of multiple different buildings that we can look into that we can refer back to as well.
I like the outline so much, Rasha, and I'm looking forward to it. I appreciate that every design project or every design studio has to have cases studies to look at in order again to inform the group. So so you are doing just one case in this with its strength and weaknesses, or just more than one case?
So we're gonna have one. We're gonna have some points about what the strengths and weaknesses of mixed use in general, from the article we found, and then we're gonna look into a specific one. We're gonna have multiple we'll look at multiple case studies, but from those multiple case studies, we'll choose one and go into depth into that specific one. But we'll still have other multiple ones that we can look into if anyone else is interested in looking at other projects. We'll have that option, but we'll go into depth one and see what those conditions are.
That's great to inform us. And I probably you missed the few minutes before you join. What you're trying to concentrate or would like to show is like I said to the group, everyone is an eye to the others. So you are our eyes in this building type. So you tell us what's the strength. I call it. You said it. You say it in a positive and negatives. I say it is strength and weaknesses by my language of the cases that you're gonna bring us. So that's the cases studies are very important in design research when you start a project like that. So thank you, Mark, for providing the info and the resources for them to pick from.
Yeah, of course. Of course. Yeah.
Thank you so much. I skimmed through the books today and look, they're very interesting.
Oh, of course.
I mean, skimming through them, they're really
yeah, they're good. I've got another one here. I kind of meant to bring it to work today, but I left so early and I kind of just spaced it out. But luckily, I had the 2 or 3 there that at my could borrow. So let me talk about. Let me say this again for everyone's benefit, but certainly for Ash and Andrew and Rasha, who just joined us. In terms of what you do illustrate, in terms of what you do share, in terms of like the content of your research as something that you're going to do us about on Tuesday and Thursday of next week, and then remember that it's going to get shared and available, right, to all of us through Google Drive. Here's the thing you need to remember, right, that it is now your information because you've taken the content. You've maybe taken a map from the Detroit Future City framework, or you maybe taken a chart from a set of drawings, or maybe you've taken a quote from the ULI, or maybe you did a photocopy, or you made a photo of like the Urbanisms book by Stephen Hull, and taken something that is part of the public domain, right? Because all of that stuff exists, right, already in its own place, in its own context, and therefore it has its own meaning. But now you've taken it and you've recontextualized it because you've put it on your sheet in the lovely, beautiful template that Courtney did, right? And suddenly that subject has a new context. It's a new context because it's against and next to and before and after other sheets and other things on the sheet. So by recontextualizing data and content and facts, it has a slightly different meaning. I'm not telling you anything you don't know, but here's what you have to remember, that in recontextualizing information, even by just copy and pasting, I'm going to just put it that simply, you must always give fair and accurate attribution to the source from which you've borrowed or taken that content from, those facts from. So if you take something from the by A&T or Stephen Hull book, you have to reference those books, those authors, that edition, that page, or whatever, right? Just like a 10th grade, right, science paper on, whatever, right, sedimentary rocks. You have to give credit. It doesn't have to be really big in terms of the overall sheet. It could be in a certain place with like footnotes, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and so on. But you need to give attribution, because if you don't do that, it appears as your facts and is your information. And there's probably very little places where that occurs unless it has to do with conclusions. So I just want to make sure that you know that that's the expectation or the ground rules. Our syllabus talks a lot about that. And it's kind of an ugly, unfortunate word called plagiarism, but I just want to make sure that there is an expectation that your work is linked, right, the larger pile of data by virtue of attribution. And here's the reason. Here's another reason why this is important, because your work is actually going to be seen later on in the semester by more eyes who bring more expertise than mine, right? And then it might get chosen, right? We hope, fingers crossed, for fine grain. And then it might ultimately be, which will have more eyes on it, with a lot more smarts than yours truly. And then it might go to the NAAB visit the next time they come through And those guys are wizards, right? They're the smartest guys around because they're looking at all of the schools and all of the work, all of the schools. So you need to make sure that, you know, you fairly attributed the things that you've sort of borrowed or taken or copy pasted. I'm not saying that everything has to be its own thing or a brand new thing. I mean, there charts and maps and those things are important elements, right, of your research. But just make sure that we understand that it comes from researching, like searching for new ways of contextualizing this fact in a way that gives credit to the original source.
You guys are doing very important part in design, which is again a study. It's listed on NAB like that, study of precedents. So that's a very important part. So looking forward to it.
Okay. Ash, do you have any closing remarks before we let them go
No, I just wish them
productive this weekend?
Enjoy the long weekend, but give us something that we can be happy about next week.
Right. And like I said, it's a long weekend. I'm not going anywhere. I might play a little golf, but even if I golf, I have access to my phone. So if you have any questions or you need to meet this way over the weekend before the presentations, I'm happy to do that. And then, like I said, probably on Saturday morning, I'll develop for Tuesday night, and then Thursday night, I'll share that with Ash. And then when we hammer it out together, when we're satisfied with that, I'll share it with you. I expect that'll happen as a Google Drive document on Sunday. So half of you will present on Tuesday, half of you will present on Thursday.
And I'll be here for all the sessions.
Yeah, and unless Ash and I do think that we can do all of them in one night, we need to work through that. I need to talk to Ash about that, but we'll work through that, and then and we need to work through how much time you'll spend and that sort of thing. But I will release that on, and I want to if I don't see you because you don't need me, I want you to have a safe holiday weekend, especially if you're traveling anywhere. But I also want it to be a productive, for you right now. All right. Ash, any final remarks?
No, thank you, Mark. You said it all.
Cool. That's what they pay me the big bucks for, you guys, right? Okay, everyone. If anyone needs to talk to me after this session that I'm about to close, I'm happy to hang around for another moment. Otherwise, I'll let you go. I've given a couple of people like Michael some things to do and to check back with me on. I still expect that to happen. But like I said, onward and upward, okay?
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Okay, bye, everyone.